let's do that.
Okay, ready?
All right.
Extra
I'll
session.
call the Concord School
Do
Committee.
your roll call vote, right?
Yeah, but we have to call the Concord School Committee meeting to order. And we are going to go into executive session under purpose 2 for the open meeting law to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct a collective bargaining session or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, and return to open session at approximately 6:30.
So moved.
So roll call.
Roll call.
Bowles, aye.
Who's aye?
Rom, aye.
Point 9.
Johnston,
I call the regional school committee to order, and all will be recorded. The Concord Regional School Committee will enter into executive session under purpose 3 of the open meeting law to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and return to open session in 15-20 minutes or so.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Johnston, aye.
Point 9.
Rom, aye.
Who's aye?
Bowles, aye.
Oh, there I.
Bob, do you want to just wait? People are responding. Just. Oh, wait.
Yeah, I can, if anybody cares, we're already in executive session for Concord, which we started 20 minutes ago. So.
We will be as quick as
Finish
possible.
our executive session, we'll be back as quickly as we can.
So let's call the Concord School Committee back to order.
I'm calling the regional school committee back to order, and we would like to.
We're going to bang hard at their
Well,
Hello.
if I
Stop
keep speaking,
visiting.
if I keep speaking, I thought they'd quiet down.
Into the
We're in
microphone.
bumptious
Okay.
crowd tonight.
We would like to have the 2018 grant presentation by the Concord Education Fund to be first item on the agenda this evening. So may I have a motion to place this presentation next on the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Okay.
Yeah,
we're ready.
also.
I want to welcome Jared Stanton to our meeting this evening. He's our new Director of Finance and Operations. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Nice to have you. This guy's maybe over here.
Hello there. Tracy Morano, that's at 39 Partridge Lane.
Yeah.
Sean Miller, 165 Central Street.
We are here to present you with the checks for Concord Public Schools and the Regional School District. Let's see what we have. So this year, we're really excited to partner with the district and do some joint grants.
Yep.
So we have a mindfulness initiative. We have some Q5 that's actually starting tomorrow that we're very excited about.
Cultural diversity.
Cultural diversity, those are like the highlights of those, so we're very excited about those. So for the district, our check is for $106,195, and we will have a spreadsheet of everything so you'll know what it's for. And then for Concord Public Schools, we're able to furnish the STEAM lab, so we're excited that that project is going. I see the pods out there,
Yes.
So I think we're ready to go on that. So the total for Concord Public Schools is $24,448.90.
Wow.
So the grand total for both districts is $130,675.90.
Wow.
Awesome.
So
Wow.
we're very
Thank you.
excited this year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
It was a great year. We had roughly 25 grants. We'd love to be able to approve them all. Some of them we really debated and went back and forth. But the core this year was reinvesting back into the innovation lab that's here, the cultural diversity, and the mindfulness along with Q5.
Awesome.
And hopefully we get a bunch more next year, because there are some good ones. We put a lot of time and effort into some of those grant proposals.
Can I just say before you go, I can't tell you the number of times that either students or teachers have told me about some cool thing that they're doing, and they tell the whole story, and then it ends with, oh, and it started with this CEF grant. And so it just, there's so much value and magic that you guys bring to the schools. Thank you so much for doing it.
And we love to do
really
it. And I will say, my kids in particular, they're like, oh yeah, I know Connect Fund grant. You know? I'm like, great. I'm like, that's why we do it. So I see it on the other end as a parent.
Right.
we're thankful that we got to go first too, because we're finishing out our dinner tonight. So.
Well, you guys dedicate a lot of hours and a lot of years
Yes.
to, I know the terms are 3 years, 3 year terms, and 6
3 year
years.
terms,
and
yeah.
all that you guys do and you know, taking care of all, going through all those grants, it's a huge amount of work. So we're so appreciative. It's awesome stuff.
Well, we're
Thank
happy
you.
to do it. We're happy to do it.
Ken, I just wanted to say a couple of things. You're another example of great volunteerism in the town of Concord. It's exceptional. I visited your website earlier today and looked at some of the details, and you know, well over 200 grants and over 20 years,
Over
right?
20 years, yeah.
Yeah.
So we started around 1994.
Right, and it's just it's so encouraging, you know, from my vantage point to see, you know, the effort involved and the money, which really helps going to very specific projects. Q5, I think, is going to be really something that we're going to talk about more and more as we go forward, and the STEAM Lab clearly is something that really we needed very much. So we're very appreciative. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And
Thanks
want me
so
to
much.
give these to you?
Sure.
Okay.
And Jared can
Come right
fight
to
away.
work. Exactly.
I'll give them CPS.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the dinner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Up next, we will recognize Justin Moy. Huh? Oh, I'm just going to do that.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry.
Let's do Justin Moy first. I think that's okay.
Sure.
It was with great pleasure that I handed Justin his graduation certificate on June 2nd, and welcome back, and all the best.
Come on up.
Come on up, Justin.
Yes.
That microphone will grab you there, and yeah, anywhere you want is fine.
Okay, cool, thank you, okay. Okay.
Christine, do you mind
You
just
could
pushing
turn
the
it on.
button underneath?
Underneath.
Just hold it in for like about a second and release, okay?
Here, take this one for now and I'll.
Yeah, we know that one works.
Oh,
There you go.
There you
can you
go.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for having me here today. I'm Justin Moy, graduating class of 2018. And I will be talking a little bit about my experience in the Concord Public School System and the Concord Carlisle Regional School District as well. So I would like to start off by thanking Mrs. Jessica Murphy, Director of SPED, for inviting me to speak today. Without the strong special education department of our district, I would not have been able to take a lot of the opportunities that I've had over the past 15 years of my public school education. Now, some of you may be asking, 15 years? Isn't K through 12 13 years?
Yeah.
Well, for me, my public school education started with the Concord Integrated Preschool. And although I have very few memories from this time, I do remember going around with my parents touring all the little preschools. It was like college tours, except who has the best toys and who has the least punishment. So eventually my parents did settle upon Concord Integrated Preschool, and I'm glad that they made that decision, because my time at Concord Integrated was integral, no pun intended, in teaching me the basic skills that would later lead me to succeed in academia. It was during preschool that I also met Mrs. Linda Crandall, my physical therapist, for 7 years. Now she's retired, but she was a large part of my elementary school time. So, moving on from preschool, which back then felt like a while, but now it's only 2 years, I still remember the very first day of elementary school, or rather, the very first bus ride going to elementary school. And so, if you can remember when you were little, you were probably all enamored with giant vehicles, right? Big vehicles, school buses, right? And so, that was no different for me. So I sat there wide-eyed as the bus came along, right? And then the bus stopped in front of my house, and I was like, it stopped in front of my house. Then the back door opened. Then a wheelchair lift came out, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. So I never thought a bus ride could be so easy, because like I'd always have to be transferred and stuff. And so talking on this soon became a common thread as I learned that this district would help me have the same opportunities as my able-bodied peers. So going on in elementary school, in addition to the normal subject material, the school also provided me physical therapy, occupational therapy, and even adaptive physical education. And even though I was physically impaired, that did not stop me from engaging in activities like, for instance, the mile run. So through the support and training of my 4th grade teacher, Dr. Susan Erickson, I was able to eventually push myself in the mile run by the end of 5th grade. During that period, I also got to push myself in the Adrian Martinez Classic. Now, moving on to 5th grade was when I first discovered my passion for theater. So every year, as some of you may know, if you had parents, or if you had kids rather, that went to Thoreau, they put on a Halloween play, and then they put on the Christmas Carol. And so going into the beginning of the year, I was a little uncertain about what I could do, because obviously in things like musicals, there's a lot of dancing and a lot of physical activity. So I was like, maybe I'll just go back and do stage crew. But no, Mr. Lemaire, one of the 5th grade teachers there, he encouraged me to join. And so instead of being stage crew, I got to be a skeleton. And then the Christmas Carol, I got to be the solicitor, knocking on Scrooge's door, much to Scrooge's annoyance. So being in theater remained a constant in my life, both in middle school and high school. And despite, again, a time of uncertainty, in 6th grade, I met Mrs. Becky Robichaux, who is the choreographer for the musicals. And she taught me how to maneuver my wheelchair. But more importantly, she showed me that I could fully participate in activities without hindering others. And so again, this draws on one of my biggest concerns as I entered middle school, which was the level of hindrance that I would be, or the level of activity that I was going to do. And tantamount to that was the Mare Vista trip, which I hear no longer exists. And so, starting on the Mare Vista trip, on one hand, I knew being an awkward middle schooler, I did not want my parents going with me. But on the other hand, I had never traveled overnight without my parents. So before the trip, my mom requested that Mr. Brendan Egan, who's here today, help me during the trip. And for a bit of background, I first met him in 4th grade when he was my aide. And I was glad that he was coming because he was somebody that would be able to help me and be able to facilitate a lot of the activities that I otherwise would not have been able to do. And so it was a success. I got to go hiking with my peers up a mountain, and during the rock climbing activity, I was suspended in the air 50 feet, so that was pretty interesting, to say the least. But after the trip, it turned out that Mr. Egan would be my aide for all of middle school, and that was really good. He eventually became the advisor of Dungeons and Dragons Club, which my friends and I founded, and now 4 years after I left him at the middle school, he is now a full SPED case manager, actually, so official teacher. So now moving on finally to high school. So I entered freshman year with uncertainty. I didn't know what assistance I would need or what sort of opportunities I would have. But throughout my entire time at CCHS, Mr. Keene and the entire SPED team was very helpful. In freshman year, I had 4 different aides due to a number of circumstances. But throughout it, if I ever needed somebody to help me, one of the Pathways teachers would step in to help. And by the end of freshman year, Mr. Don Matson, one of the Pathways tutors, became my permanent aide for the rest of high school. Later in high school, 2 great opportunities arose when I was able to travel both to Japan and China with my classmates. Without the district providing me with an aide, I certainly would not have been able to partake in these amazing experiences. I got to see the Terracotta Warriors, which have amazed me since I made little tiny models of them in 4th grade, so seeing the big ones was a huge change. And in Japan, I got to go to the top of Mount Takao, which is on the outskirts of Tokyo. You could see the entire city. Being in a district that allowed me to undertake these opportunities and having a supportive administrator like Mr. Michael Mastrullo is really a blessing to me. And because of this, as part of my 40 hours of community service requirement for CCHS, I decided to volunteer with my friend at the Concord Integrated Preschool. So back to preschool. So along with the occupational therapist there, Donna Valmuth, who I already knew from preschool, my friend and I came in twice a week to teach the kids songs based on the curriculum that they were learning. So that was anywhere from transportation to even camping and food sometimes, lots of different kids songs, Wheels on the Bus, all those. And so it was rewarding getting to see all these young kids be inspired by the education that they are receiving, even if some of them may be trying to take a nap while doing so. And so, in addition, I also served on Student Senate while at CCHS. And this year, I think our big thing was the CCHS Spirit Assembly. And I'm very grateful to have been able to serve on that as well. I would overall like to thank both the district and the school committee. And in the fall, I will be heading to WPI, which would not have been possible without both the support of my education from this wonderful district and my guidance counselor, Dr. Allison Nowicki, who initially recommended the college to me. I hope that other students, both now and in the future, can have as meaningful of an experience that I did. Thank you.
Wow.
Do I get to be grilled by you now?
Oh my goodness. I think we're all too moved to ask any questions.
Justin, would you just talk a little on your Muscular Dystrophy Association work so they have that
Oh,
information
yes,
too?
sure. So I've been involved with the muscular dystrophy since as early as I can remember clearly. So that'd be about age 8. And so I've been working with them. I go to Muscular Dystrophy Association camp, which is a free camp for 1 week and it's overnight. And just this year, I got chosen to be one of the national ambassadors for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. And so that means that I'll be traveling the country, talking to sponsors, talking to families, talking to scientists about why they should be supporting this organization. And so I'm glad to be a part of that, and I look forward to my duties during the summer.
Wow. Where will you travel?
Well, I get the notices about 2 to 3 weeks in advance. Right now, I know that I'll be traveling to New York City, and I'll be staying right in Times Square and talking to new sponsors there. So, yeah, in April, I went down to Mohegan Sun, not to gamble, but rather to talk to the firefighters at a regional conference of all the New England area and upstate New York area about filling the boot and why that's important and how they can be successful with that. So,
That's awesome.
Oh my God.
It's impressive.
thank you.
Yes.
Justin, I want to thank you for the courage that you've shown in your experience at the high school, and I've been inspired every time I've seen you on the stage in one of the theater productions or around the campus, and I can't think of a better emissary for muscular dystrophy than you. So wish you all the well going forward.
Thank you.
Justin, you came tonight to acknowledge the educators who have been with you on this journey. And you ended by doing what? By sharing your hope that others would have the thrill of learning and development that you've had.
Yes.
So I think it's time to say thank you.
Thank you.
And speaking of emissary, I feel like as you go out into the world and are able to say that you came from CCHS, you are such an amazing emissary for us, and we will all be proud to know that you are even uttering our district's name. So thank you.
Well, thank you all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Wow.
Oh, yeah,
That's
please.
amazing.
If I may say just one thing, I have to talk to my picnic, right?
Yeah.
You know, Justin is, it's not hyperbole to suggest, he's just one of probably the most amazing kid I've encountered as a principal. And he is so talented and so humble, and he does so many things well. Nothing will get in his way, nothing will stop him. I mean, he skis, he sings, he acts, he is super intelligent. I don't know if you want to share what your goal is, what you want to do. You told me it's Canby Lake.
Okay, I can answer another question. See, I told you I'd be real with that.
Yeah.
So at WPI, I'll be studying bioinformatics and computational biology. And my eventual goal is to be able to work with academics and the pharmaceutical industry in order to try and cure my illness.
Oh, wow.
We're sure you will.
Yes.
I wouldn't bet against him.
I have great hope for that now.
He is an inspiration to us all, so thank you, Justin.
Yes.
Thanks, Justin. Oh my goodness, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Justin.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you, Mom, too.
Yeah, thanks, Mom.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh,
So now we'll move to public comments, and
Yeah.
we welcome our high school representative, Ariel Waldman.
I don't really think I can follow that.
Yeah.
Today was the last day of finals, and Q5, which the education fund brought up, starts tomorrow, and all of the Q5 trips have already left, including a hiking trip to northern New Hampshire, a two Spanish language trips to Ecuador, a French language trip to Quebec, a Holocaust history trip to Germany and Poland, and an earth science trip to Norway. The school track and field season has ended, but a girls 4x8 relay team, as well as a senior sprinter, Claudia Coons, made it to the New England Championship at University of New Hampshire this past weekend. The relay team made top 10, and Claudia ran a school record in the 200 of 25.38 seconds. Last Thursday, the Adrian Martinez Classic happened for its 11th year, and this meet is in honor of a past CC student who was a standout athlete in both soccer and track, who passed away from cardiac arrest. This meet features local runners, All-Americans, Olympians, and NCAA champs. And the women's mile got down to 4:25, which is really impressive. For our CC teams, the softball team made it to round 2 of playoffs and are playing right now at CC. And the girls lacrosse team made it to round 3 of playoffs so far. And the seniors graduated last Saturday, June 2nd, and everyone is really looking forward to summer break as well.
Awesome. Congrats being done.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a great summer.
You too.
Take care. We have 2 public comments. Anyone else that came in late maybe that would like to comment? If not, we'll start with Emerson Lynn.
Oh, you can come up to there.
Oh,
yeah,
either
that's
way.
right, yeah.
Mike's not on.
You have to hold it for a second. There we go.
Okay, so I'm just gonna make this quick and easy, but I'd really like to thank you all for choosing Mr. Cameron as our principal because he's been amazing this year. So in robotics, we were doing like the water purifying bike. So in order, we wanted to make that reality. So he helped us build it because he's done fundraisers for us and stayed past his hours to work to help us reach our goals. So thank you very much.
That's awesome. Thank you for
Oh my
sharing.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming to tell us that.
He'll be here later.
Yeah.
Valerie Tretniak.
This is really interesting because all the comments are thank yous, including mine, believe it or not. I sent you a message by email just a short time ago, and I did it quickly, so I apologize for any mistakes. But I do want to read it so that because I want to share it with everybody. I want it to be public. So, to members of the school committee, some years ago, I became concerned about school leadership in Concord and expressed my criticisms publicly. It was my belief then that normal checks and balances did not work with the kind of top-down management that was in place. As the 2018 school year ends and my youngest child graduates from CCHS, I find that I too am graduating from being a concerned parent. I want to thank all of our school committee members for what appears to be a real turnaround. Recently, I've been watching from the sidelines as the school committee has stepped up. I was amazed to see over 60 meetings listed since September. CPS, CCHS Joint Policy Subcommittee, Budget Subcommittee, and the CCHS Camp Advisory. I can see from your meeting minutes that you are working hard to be informed and to serve as good representatives of the communities of Concord, Carlisle, and Boston. I want to congratulate you all on successfully hiring a new superintendent who is a thoughtful and determined problem solver, who operates with quiet confidence and not an iron fist. I see in this administration a willingness to listen and consider multiple views, a decision maker who understands that working with parties involved in an issue rather than dictating an answer is a valuable asset to this school system. I also want to committee members on hiring a new high school principal who in a short time has created a happier climate. Students can now feel CCHS is their school and not just a cold, precious building. Mr. Mastrula is well liked, and for good reason. It is impossible for him not to care about all the students, and he's genuinely engaged with the student body. He offers a caring presence and the goodwill that CCHS needed. So well done. I offer a very sincere thank you for all your work, and I know others in the community also feel grateful for this positive change. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Valerie. Valerie, I think we'll have you back next week.
Yeah.
The next meeting, if we deserve it. Okay, that concludes the public comments. We will now go on to reading of the minutes. We have a chance to take a look, everyone?
Yes.
So I may have a motion then?
Sure, I'll move to approve the minutes of May 7th and May 21st, both joint minutes.
Second. Both.
Any discussion?
Yes, I had two very brief comments. Hold on, I have to move these out of the way. On the 7th, it says here Ms. Bout called the meeting to order, but I think by that point we had transitioned. I think by the 7th, it was Joanna who called the meeting to order. Is that right? Because we had a meeting after town meeting. This wasn't the one where we established new chairs, and so therefore we had done that before. So I think it's supposed to be Ms. Boynton called the meeting to order. So that was the only one on that one. And on the 21st, this is very minor, but at the bottom of page 2, you have Jenny Lee, and Lee is spelled L-I, not L-E.
Oh, okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
That was it.
Thank you for your careful reading.
No problem.
Going to my left, yeah.
Any other changes, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next is the chairs and liaison reports. Any liaison from the members? Hasn't been much, right?
No, no.
Yeah.
I just to I'll point out that the long-range plan is nearly complete. We have 2 more meetings, and final draft will be submitted and available for public viewing. A lot of work, a lot of good people.
So I just want to make a comment about the graduation, which several of us attended, and I want to thank Mike Mostrolov and his staff for a flawless ceremony. The weather was warm, but Mike made sure that there was no rain, so it worked well.
I didn't even notice it was warm.
Oh, really? The other comment I wanted to make is I attended both Rosebush ceremonies, along again with some other school committee members, but what struck me there was that it gave an outsider like myself a real opportunity to hear what some of these teachers have done and achieved over so many years, and there were so many positive comments, and I knew this before, but it's confirmed every time one of these kind of events take place that we just have a great group of teachers, and we're hiring some new ones right in the summer, so I think we will be continuing with that effort. So again, thanks for the ceremony, and went well. Superintendent's report is next.
Okay, great, thank you. I do want to just open by recognizing yesterday the passing of Betsy Woods. She was a 29-year veteran, noon aid assistant, supporting students in the cafeteria at Thoreau up until 3 weeks ago at the age of 86. And she passed yesterday morning after a really brief illness, and so Thoreau's heart's broken here a little bit as we go through. And I think how many children she's touched in that cafeteria in 30 years. So the community's pouring their empathy around her family as always. But I think it was worth noting someone of that tenure and impact. And on our ranks as an employee up until 3 weeks ago at 86. Think about that. So we're sorry and sad to hear of her passing. In terms of other updates, strategic planning, we had our last large group planning meeting in here last night with the consultant and have really solid drafts of objectives and initiatives. So the administrators will have one more session with your consultant next week to do a little bit of house cleaning on those and to try to see what we can solidify for outcomes. Other things we talked on last night were the core values, the mission statement, vision statement, and also the communication piece of all of this. So we're working on what that looks like next. I'm going to every building and making an opportunity available for all faculty before they leave to hear where we're at. I was at Thoreau this afternoon, and the plan was very well received. Lots of great dialogue and questions about it, and we want to make sure that the staff stays really engaged with where we are in the process. So I will bring updates of that for public discussion at the June 26th meeting, at least so there's a sharing out of our current status and what the drafts look like. Cultural proficiency, you heard the Education Fund has sponsored our professional development work for next year, so we're very excited to open in August with a pre-K to 12 staff presentation by Dr. Beverly Daniels-Tatum, who is renowned for her work in this topic and a nationally known speaker. And we know she's going to set our work off for next year with a very practical and yet inspirational message to us on how important the work is for every child that we interact. Mindfulness, I've taken that on pretty directly the last few weeks. We've been working with the elementary schools to have a team of K-5 to talk on what those next steps look like. Again, through the Education Foundation, Education Fund support, we are updating all of our open circle materials for the K-5, and that will give us that equity and consistency that we've been looking for while we foster what does mindfulness mean to us in elementary school. So there's a team that will continue to be in place. Middle and high schools are well on their way to some materials also sponsored by CEF in the advisory blocks next year. So we feel like we're hitting a baseline of district stride here in terms of what our discussions will be and how we open this up in a broader way. Communication and collaboration, I'm just everywhere because that's this time of year and it's so much fun. So this morning, I mean, how hard was it to be at 2 field days this morning where it's beautiful and 70 degrees outside, and Thoreau and Alcott are outside actively doing things. So I'm going to as many things as I can as I get invited, and it's just a really, really exciting, fun, positive time. I also went to the Concord Carlisle Community Chess Day of Giving last Thursday morning, which was a great, Christine was there, great, really wide representation of the community, and to see where their efforts are going and the multifaceted ways in which that support comes back to the schools. In some cases it's direct programming, but I watched 2 families in need receive immediate and direct help from all of those involved with community chess, and not only the funding but the manpower that goes with it, and all of that much possible because of the funding that community chess provides. So there's no question of their direct impact to the community and the schools and the children in the schools. Finally, we mentioned this as well, as the STEAM Innovation Lab is under construction down the hallway, so we're excited about that. It will open in the fall, and as you heard, CEF has agreed to sponsor the furniture we need, so we aren't wheeling in the old dated tables from the other room and the big people chairs, but we'll have appropriate furniture for the younger visitors that come over here. And then finally, pretty appropriately, I think, with Justin's inspirational message, the special education review has a draft in hand that we're reading for factual accuracy and giving feedback to, so that'll be a working document for us over the summer and then to respond to in terms of what our next steps are as we get into the fall. So, thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is an update to the high school improvement plan 2017-2018. Oh, I'll do that. Sorry, there was one.
All right, hello all. Can I stand here? Does this work? Okay. Quick update too. So I just came from the girls softball game. They won. 6-1. Hannah McMorrow got the W too.
Yeah.
Your colleague's daughter, so
Yeah.
she was the pitcher. So they play Thursday, I believe Thursday, not sure where. Girls lacrosse also does play Thursday in Natick. Boys lacrosse is playing right now. Girls tennis is also alive as a team, and then Maggie Dewar also is on the individual is still alive too. So exciting stuff, and it's all coming to a close soon, but it'll be the next few weeks will be good. So yeah, I'm glad Justin got to be here tonight, and also definitely have to start with thanks to CEF and the PEA. They've been so supportive this year. Now I know I sent you a lot of information. It was well over 100 pages. We're not going to do that tonight, I promise. I will do a quick update of the school improvement plan. The first goal is to utilize student work and data to drive targeted innovations and/or adjustments in teaching and learning. And so one thing I wanted to highlight here, and I'm not going to pull it up, is the student feedback goal. So each teacher, as part of the evaluation system, must have 2 goals, one professional practice, one student learning goal. And the student feedback, so we as a leadership team write a few. It's totally voluntary if they want to adopt them, but it's really things that we're interested in seeing implemented. And so one of those was student feedback, another was presentation skills, what we'll get to in a second. And about 30 teachers adopted it, and it's really about not only student voice, but informing our practice based on the information that we're getting from kids and not waiting just till the end of the quarter or the end of the semester, trying to get it intermittently, whether it's at the end of the quarter, even end of lesson, and there was some very concrete ways to do that. So it was about 30 teachers, 25, I'm sorry, that adopted that, so we're excited about that. Another thing I wanted to talk about briefly was just RTI that we're implementing next year. Kristen Herbert was really instrumental in bringing that to the school. It's my experience with it, it's typically a middle school and elementary school, much easier in terms of scheduling. And so I needed to be won over, to be quite honest, for it to be effective at the secondary level, and I certainly have been. And I'm really excited about what this looks like next year. So we have a team that meets regularly. We've adopted a few screeners that I'm going to show you a little bit about. And then also identified elements at RTI that are already in the high school. We just really don't call them RTI at the moment, but we will. So how it works, so we're going to start with the 9th grade. We will screen all 9th graders in ELA, math, and also social emotional learning. And it takes about 20 minutes per screener. And I did not believe that when I first heard it. And Sarah Okers, who uses the STARS program at the middle school, came, did a presentation, and it was really phenomenal. And it is only 20 minutes, actually times you out after 20 minutes. And I'll show you just a couple of what the reports look like, and because it gives you a lot of valuable data. Also a social emotional screener, which is from Pear. They're out of McLean Hospital, so excited about that as well. I'll show you a little piece of that too. So when you look at a typical school, it should be an 85, 10, 5 structure, right? So you have 80% of your student body in Tier 1, that's the majority of your students who are succeeding in the classroom based on just effective differentiation and intervention strategies. With about, Tier 2, about 15% receive some type of individualized instruction, but not on an IEP. And then 5% of the student body on an IEP. That is not what we have at the high school. And really, to be quite honest, there's probably not a school in the state that has only 5% of their student body on an IEP. We're closer to 20%, but we're hoping with an RTI model that we can have less kids on a long-range plan. So these are just elements that we identified at the school that really function in many ways as an intervention strategy, and that we will really just need to create a system where we can share this data together, almost like coalesce it, as opposed to all these really great programs functioning in a silo, though, not really communicating with each other. So again, just universal screener, progress monitoring that happens every 4 to 6 weeks, as opposed to waiting to the end of a quarter or semester, and quickly identifying whether or not the strategies are working, and then making decisions based on the data we receive. And this gets into just Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. So I'm just really excited about that next year. As a matter of fact, we visited Natick yesterday. There's not a lot of schools that are using it well. I think Natick is one. We did have a team go there yesterday. And I'm not going to get too deep into what the reports look like, but as I just mentioned, this is the math screener. Every student in 9th grade takes it roughly 20 minutes. They take it at the middle school now. And it gives you here a little baseline, and then tells you, the kids that are performing above benchmark, kids that are on watch, and then you have kids that in intervention and in urgent intervention. So it gives you really valuable data. And just another graph that's produced. And then it also produces a report that's based on standards, and will tell you, what grade level they're performing at, their percentile rank based on other students nationally. So really, really excited about.
That's all in 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then you would give that universal screener again, say 4 to 6 weeks later, or maybe by the quarter, or maybe by the semester.
Wow.
And again, I needed to be won over, and Sarah Oprah, who's using it at the middle school, swears by it. So, and also the Pear Institute, the social emotional one, and this again, we thought we would really struggle finding a universal screener here, and this is a really powerful tool. I'll show you in a second. But your tier 1 here is essentially building a developmentally supportive environment, which we have. We have a lot of programs to support kids, a lot of great people working hard to support kids. Tier 2 is effectively support struggling students before crisis, trying to be proactive. And Tier 3 is your intervention students are in crisis and there's a safety net. So this is what a report would look like, and you can see it can give you everything from relationships with peers and adults, where they're functioning, and optimism, reflection, empathy. Some other things that it tests down here is learning interest, critical thinking, school bonding, so do they feel connected to school? And we have talked to other schools that are using it and love the product. So we're excited about using this next year. And again, since we're only doing it with the freshman class, it allows us to work out the kinks. This isn't going to be totally seamless.
Is this data all self-reported?
Well, the students essentially will sit at a terminal and it is self-reported.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does the test work against learning the test?
It's a good question. We're going to work on it.
Yeah.
We're going to find that out. Yeah, it's just too early for me to even make that assessment. I was just really struck by the power of the tool. It seems like a great tool. And again, a few other schools that were using it swear by it, and obviously it's a world-class hospital. And this is just a quick snapshot of the RTI data team at high school. Done a lot of really good work this year. Looking forward to continuing that work next year. So next steps, again, we adopted 3 screeners. We have a data team. We're working to use Aspen as a spot to warehouse all the data that we have. There's reports that people can easily access and use to inform. I'm going to screen the entire freshman class, and again, we went to data today. The presentation skills, this is a total, now we're switching gears. This was another goal that was developed by the leadership team. And what I like about this is it is something the entire school could work on. Presentation skills are universal. And so we developed rubrics for each individual department, and it allowed us to collaborate across the school on an area where we felt like we could improve on our presentation skills. It's a skill that every kid can benefit from, and based on the achievement of our students, it was an area as a whole that we could improve upon. And 29 teachers adopted that goal, so that was exciting. So goal 2, cultivate positive connections among all community members in order to promote a mindful culture of wellness, responsibility, and good citizenship. I do want to just briefly talk about the SPED report. I was already here, but I can give a little to talk about that, but I can give a little update. This is all as a result of some really hard work by a lot of really hard-working people. Jessica Murphy greenlighted this last year. That was instrumental in getting West Ed in here, to have a consultant come in, and it's been a very collaborative, very difficult and challenging process, but really collaborative and really effective. There were some limitations with our model right now. It's a grade-based model, and you might have kids in a room grouped together that have an executive functioning disability, or maybe a reading and writing disability, social emotional disabilities, and that is really challenging for a teacher to try to meet the needs of all those students. And the schedule as it was, this was staffed primarily by tutors. There wasn't enough face time with case managers, an area that we recognized that we needed to improve upon. Just more face time between case managers and students on their caseload, because the case managers, this is the special education expert. Study skills in our current model is really focusing on homework triage, to be quite honest. Not a lot of design instruction, and there's the homework load is heavy, and really trying to help kids get through homework, and so that also needed to be addressed, focusing more on skill development and what the kids are doing well. Another challenge is we have a lot of really great tutors, highly educated, the most highly educated tutors probably in the country, and that's no exaggeration. But the model, again, over-reliance on tutors. So our current model, again, we're assigned by grade level, and next year we're going to a cohort model. And so students will be grouped by strengths and deficits, and not necessarily by grade level, allows teachers to support in a more specialized way. And they'll also travel with those kids for essentially 4 years, so some continuity, you really get to know the student well. Some of the examples of potential cohorts: social communication, executive functioning, social emotional learning, reading and writing skills. So excited about the cohort model. Okay, switching gears again, just as we talk about 21st century skills and global citizenship, there's a lot of wonderful opportunities through exchanges and travel, educational travel opportunities. One correction I would make to our student: they're not Q5 trips. They're trips that take place during Q5. So they would typically take place in February and April, and a lot of these moved to June. Just thought that would be a better spot for them, and we'll see how it goes this year. So this is our first year of doing that. But right now we have kids in Ecuador, we have kids in Norway, and some really good stuff. And I was notified by Eric Pohl today that there was a USA versus Ecuador basketball game today, and we prevailed. That's really important. So tomorrow starts Q5. So excited about this. I think it's going to be a tremendous way to end the year. The amount of work that's been put in to this by Lori Fortunato, by Mike Bell, by Brian Miller, the logistics of it, and just the planning, the negotiating of these opportunities. It's been a lot of work, but I think it's going to bear fruit starting tomorrow. We're really excited. Looks like the weather is going to cooperate.
So Mike,
yes.
How many different Q5
76
courses?
courses.
76.
Yeah. And they run the gamut from everything you can imagine, from very academic to paddleboard. I mean, there's going to be some great opportunities. So really excited about it. What I like about it, it's been a lot of collaboration, particularly amongst different disciplines, which has been great, and really allowing students and faculty to pursue shared interests together. So fingers crossed on the weather, but it looks like it's going to be a great couple of weeks. Goal 3, foster a culture of academic engagement, curiosity, honesty, and inquiry. Just one thing I wanted to highlight here is really focusing on a reading culture. So we have a recommended list for students to read over the summer, and we also have staff lists. So we'll actually be 2. I'll add one to that for summer reading, and we also invite students to do the same, and allows for just some little collaboration and work together. But again, just promoting reading. Challenge Success this year. Again, this is an organization we partner with out of Stanford, and really challenging what we define as success. Essentially, is looking to just not only reduce student stress, but teach students how to manage stress. And so 3 focal areas this year are homework, student engagement, and extracurricular activities. Some of the things we did were just did a time management resource for kids to look at when they were picking their schedule, and get an idea of how much homework would be allotted for each, or what's the workload for each class, and allowing them to make an informed decision when they select their courses. We also sent a letter to coaches, just asking them to be part of the solution with strict guidelines on how long practices could be, and also no homework vacations, coordinated assessment days around the end of quarters, the end of semesters, and really what that's doing is avoiding the 5 tests the day before vacation, so spreading it out. And also a few days after each break, where no assessments. So goal 4, this will always be one of our goals, which is just culture of sustainability throughout the school community. And I think we do a really good job. We encourage carpool to school week. Not that there's a parking issue, but carpool, helpful. More kids would ride their bike, that'd be great too. But it's just a great recycling efforts going on at the school. And obviously we reuse, we wash all products in the cafeteria too. So that's good. Also partnered with some local sustainability groups, Concord Carlisle Food Collaborative. We hosted an annual food farm and garden school fair. Also, Rivers and Revolutions does a lot of work in this area. And so, yeah, I highlight a few of those as well. Okay, so now that's the end of the school improvement plan. Just want to highlight just very briefly the early release that is coming next year. And not only to give you an update, but you might recall during negotiations, it's really, you created the environment for this to even take place, and we're very grateful, and we're really looking forward to next year. Again, it's been a really collaborative effort. So it started with this team of 6 ironing out the structure, and we debated whether to do 1 a month and a shorter, or do 4 of a much longer early release, and we chose the latter. So there'll be 4 next year, and they're 3 hours each, and so it allows for a deeper dive. And this committee did the lion's share of the work developing what I'm about to show you here. So there was a couple things that we talked about as a group. And one is, what are some of the essential components of quality PD? One is choice, just like we talked about student choice, educator choice is very important. It can't be a one-size-fits-all model. Something where we can take a sustained deeper dive into topics, finding more effective than your one-off professional development opportunities. And also something tangible, actionable you can take into your classroom the next day or the next week. And we started by with an essential question. So how do we reach, engage, teach all students to have a successful experience at CCHS? So essentially we've got it down to what we're calling, they're really themes, we've called them paths. And teachers will select a path, and they will stay on that path for the entire year. So for 3 of the 4 early release days. And why it's 3 out of the 4 is 1 is reserved for straight curriculum work, whether it's same course collaboration, part while working with cross grade level students. So we proposed 6 paths, and then whittled it down to 4 based on the feedback from staff. So 1 is really just taking a deeper dive into the SPED report recommendations, or total of 9, and how we can implement those with a heavy focus on RTI, but some of the others as well. And if I did go back, this will give you, if you clicked on that link, it's just a more detailed dive into some of the topics, and who's on each of the committee, the staff that are responsible for each path. The second one is just focused on instructional methods, how can we make it more engaging in the classroom, and really sharing best practices, and also looking at just your current research to see, again, how we can just improve our practice. The third is social emotional learning and team mental health. And the fourth is interdisciplinary work. For this one, less of an emphasis on your larger Twice Told Tales, which is a partnership between English and social studies, which has been great, but focusing more on individual lessons and maybe units. So developing courses is a lot of work. And we thought more collaboration, interdisciplinary that can take place, the better. And so if we could do it on a little smaller level in terms of lessons, etc. Cultural competency did not have enough people sign up for it, but we've essentially embedded it into each one. So the folks that showed an interest in there, asked them to take a lead. This is going to be a focal point for the district next year. So. I think that's it anyway. So.
It's awesome.
Wow.
So thank you again.
Amazing.
It's been a lot of great work from a lot of great people at the school.
Yeah, thank you for all your work. 1, to whittle it down to whatever that was, 10 or 15 minutes. Impressive, but you really don't stop, and you have a lot of energy for a lot of really good things, and you've got people who are joining you. It's really cool to watch. So thank you so much for that.
Can I just remark on the momentum, since you started now almost 2 years ago, the momentum, the amount of things and changes for the good, improvements that are coming out of the high school now is just incredible. I mean, compared to where we were, and obviously it was a great place and a great place to learn, but kind of moving along at the same speed, and now just the amount of change, but improvement and just richness, growth and richness that is happening is
yeah, it's a really great team, to be quite honest, and I can't say enough about Brian Miller. I mean, Brian Miller's amazing. And Leslie came on this year, and she's done a nice job. We have a leadership team, department chair, so there's a lot of people working and pulling in the same direction, which is quite helpful. The collaboration, it's a little bit of a buzzword, but it is so important, particularly in education, because it's very easy to get into your classroom, shut the door, and you're working in a silo. And so the fact that we are collaborating really well, not only by departments, but now across departments, it is sort of exciting.
Mike, could you take just one moment and talk a little bit more about the cohort and skill-based approach?
Yeah.
My question, I'm curious how confident you are in whether we have the data and mechanics in place to do this kind of grouping as quickly as you want to do it. It sounds good in concept.
Yeah, so what I just highlighted, to be quite honest, is like 20 hours of work. And so there was 4 or 5 days where we just, the entire special education department, Jess, as well as the high school administration, were working together with a consultant, really fine-tuning this model. And so, will there be bumps in the road? Of course. And do we have every detail ironed out? We definitely don't. But in a really good place, and I think structurally it's a much better model, and we'll adjust as we're going through it. But yeah, I think it's, I'm excited about it.
Could you also say a little more about the student feedback program that you were talking about? I mean, I think it reminds me a little of how Lori even asked for feedback from us, from teaching staff, but I love the idea that teachers are opting into collecting student feedback.
Yeah, I mean, the kids are, we really do truly believe the student voice is very important. In addition to that, they have really good ideas. And we just did it at graduation practice. We just had them fill out a sheet of paper with what was your best memory, and also what's one recommendation. And the amount of, I mean, some of them are joking, right? So you get one, I recall, he said, ask a junior because I'm out of here. But there actually are a lot of things in there that's that's a good idea. So the more we can involve them in the process, the better. And if you did take a deeper dive into that goal, it's very structured and it's standards based, and just not only gives ideas of how to collect feedback, but how it can inform your instruction. So yeah, it's definitely a culture where student voice is encouraged, and they have great ideas that really do.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank
you. Thank you, Mike. Excellent presentation, and keep the good work going. Next is correspondence. We had one email from a group called Partners for a Campus Track, and we had heard from them before at the Campus Advisory Committee meetings, and as the name implies, they're very much in favor of a track at the high school. Next is the superintendent self-assessment evaluation.
So I provided this as the next step in the process of my evaluation. So we are on track and on time. Because of the length of the agenda tonight, I wasn't going to go through all of these pieces. What I've essentially done is given you updates, additional references to evidence under each standard, as well as under each of the goals that I set. I think it's been very beneficial, and you can hear how it all intertwines as we bring other reports in, that the reporting I've done every month has continued to serve as a nice umbrella to keep all of the goals alive. And then you're now tonight going to hear some of the building-based work that supports it, CEF supporting it. It really has become a driving factor in how we've been operating this year, that my goals, they weren't the district goals because they were my goals. It was the other way around. They became my goals because they were what the district was ready to work on. So I can take questions, I think. You're going to have more time with this document on your own as you continue in the process, but I didn't think it necessarily need to be talked on in great depth tonight, since the 26th is the formal evaluation.
No, that's fine. One second.
I appreciated the updating of the few things that was.
It's actually very validating.
Yeah. Well, and we've all been along for this.
Yeah.
As you say, as you reported out, so it's.
Yeah, in the nature of how this says self-assessment, it really did feel like it was bring that process to me to take the time to do this for you. So.
And I would say it's been not only very helpful to have your 2 updates in different colors here, but also just the fact that your superintendent's reports, every time we meet, are all based on the goals that we all agreed on from the beginning. As I wrote my part of the review, I felt like wow, well, this is easy in a way, because you've kept us so up to date the whole way. We know where all of this is, and we know pretty much everything. So thank you for that regular
No, I'm glad that
communication.
worked.
It's so
I think
helpful.
that's part of what we were figuring out this year, was what process would be most effective. So
Right.
Yeah.
that structure to my reports every other week, I think, was very helpful to all of us.
Definitely, it's been very helpful.
I'm not going to be here on the 26th, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next is an update of the legal request for proposals.
So this is a status update as well as a discussion on where you want to go next. So the takeaway that I had from our last conversation on the legal RFP was to put it out by invitation after spending some time with my colleagues in other local higher performing Metro West districts and see who they use for some of the different firms. Just to remind you all, we don't have to do a formal bid process. The RFP is a structure for us, not a legal requirement. So I did that, and in surveying the other districts, it quickly became a short list. There's essentially 3 to 4 firms being utilized extensively by multiple districts. And so the RFP's gone out to 6 firms, including the 2 who support us right now. So I think that left me with the question, because initially the direction was to put it out to 10. And I've actually gotten to the point where to come to 10 would start to get into putting it out to folks we don't have a connection to or someone who has referred them to us. So I think that led to the question of, was that where you wanted it, or did you want to do a more public process where people could solicit and provide us feedback without the invitation? I was just looking for that next piece, because I think 6 was smaller than you originally intended, and wanted to see where you were at. Those that went out, all went out within the timeline of due back to us by the 15th. Again, it's not a legal process, so we have some flexibility there if you want a broader span of feedback before we get into the decision-making aspect of this.
Do we have the document with us such that you could answer this question? What criteria do we have listed in the document on the street now regarding experience by organizations that would reply?
I don't believe it says. We'd have to pull it up from the last agenda. I don't think it qualifies.
So were it to go
per se.
further, we would be opening it rather widely.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I'm of the mind on these things that opening them up is a good idea. We don't know who's going to respond or what they're going to respond with. And it's an opportunity to learn. I will be surprised if the firm we end up selecting isn't from the group that we've identified in that research, but you never know. Yeah. And there's very little harm, and unless you tell us otherwise, I don't think there's much harm in expanding the opportunity for people to respond.
I usually agree with that. I feel like it can't hurt to cast a wide net, put it out there openly for anybody to potentially respond. And then to some extent, like you say, well, even if we end up with one of these 6, we know that we've done our due diligence to create an opportunity for any possibility out there, and then we've chosen the best one. Unless it's an undue amount of work or process or something else to get there.
Yeah,
but
we
it doesn't
wouldn't
seem
know
like
exactly
it
what the
is.
response would be. I think that's the only variable, is you'd have to process everything that comes in. But
Right.
I think there's a benefit to that. To me, all of this starts to feel like when we're in the hiring process, we want as many applications as possible, and then you screen from there.
Right.
I think we would just reverse it, that we'd be looking perhaps for certain connections or references, and certainly interviews. All of that work would have to be part of the discussion anyway. So I think you would vet experience and exactly whether the qualifications fit our needs or not.
I believe we have a 5-year reference.
Yeah, I was trying to scan as we said. Thank you for 5 years.
And if we follow that, if we send it out, do we then adhere to the sort of legal way of doing it and advertise for a certain period of time and, go through the
My recommendation, given the date, was to put it out this week and leave it open until the 1st of July. That's an extension of 2 weeks from where we're at. So that would, I think if people needed more time, we could certainly discuss that, but I wouldn't want to lose all summer on this
No,
either,
right.
so, yeah.
That
I
was my
think that-
concern, is like if one downside might be waiting a long
Right.
time, but that's what I was trying to get at.
I think that makes sense. I'd definitely be behind putting it more broadly, extending it 2 weeks, and then we have our broad net.
Okay, so we have a basic consensus on that? As far as I can tell? I'm in favor of that, so that
Yeah,
sounds good.
I don't know if we're allowed to, but if you need help screening, if you get a lot of applicants.
Yeah, I think this is going to become our next discussion, I think, on the 26th, is who's going to be involved. It is your decision. So we would certainly want a number of you involved, I would think, and talk on how that would work. So thank you.
For the record, we went from 5 to 10 years. The
Thank you.
document that went out is 10 years. Raises the bar pretty high for experience.
Yeah. That's-
Right, which
All right,
means
that's good.
we're not likely to get
Yeah, we don't
100
yeah,
applicants
we
to
don't
screen
want-
here.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next on the agenda is the budget subcommittee discussion. We have had a budget subcommittee for about a year. It focused primarily on benchmarking, and you know, I've certainly looked around. Many towns have budget subcommittees, many school committees that is, and the charge as it was drawn up for the budget subcommittee, you know, about a year ago is maybe somewhat limited. And do we want to change that in any way, or?
Well, let me chime in a little. You know, we've had some discussion around this, and you know, one of the things we were looking at was, you know, how do we approach the budget process, both development and the current year process. I would make a suggestion as a starting point for some discussion on this, that we have traditionally had chairs involved in the budget development process. Chairs have a lot to do otherwise, and in the interest of sort of spreading the load a little. I was thinking of vice chairs. Came into the job with the understanding part of the responsibility is to work with Lori and the finance director on budget development where our input is needed and necessary and wanted. That we take that approach, and then that a budget subcommittee of potentially 3 people, 2 from Concord, 1 from Carlisle, could be more focused on what's going on in the current year. As we've seen over the past few years, there's always something that seems to come up in the process of the budget that is complicated and challenging, and oftentimes leads us down the path of at least preparing a warrant article for supplemental appropriation. So I was thinking being prepared and cognizant of probably to a little greater degree than we are individually as a school committee member, of what's going on with the current budget. One of the ways of doing that is being responsible for signing off on warrants. We'd have to take a vote to have that happen, but you know, with the expectation that there would be a little more delving into those than I think we have been able to do in the past. And then if there are things that come up, and you know, this is somewhat a question for Jared, I suspect he'll be looking at things and have some ideas and may want our input as a school committee and sort of public-facing body on how things might be perceived and accepted and that sort of thing, and certainly in this coming year could be involved in that.
So I check for understanding. You're suggesting possibly that the vice chairs be in the budget development process for the coming year, and that this subcommittee, this group that is watching the current year's developments and.
Yeah. And one of the benefits of that, ultimately, I mean, there's no sort of prejudice toward non-vice chairs being on the budget subcommittee, but it gives 5 of us an opportunity to be more involved in the budget, while spreading out the responsibility in a way that makes it more manageable, because there are always other things that we're doing. You know, being involved in the current year budget and the projected budget can be a full-time job for a school committee member. We're just throwing that out there really for your consideration and input from administration. This is probably the first year it's hearing of any of this. So
he's going to agree with everything, so I'll
sounds good, right? So you're saying, though, just to, I guess I'm clarifying like Joanna, because it wasn't what I was imagining before. You're saying the budget subcommittee would only focus on current year kind of actuals and what we're doing, but not the process for creating the following year's budget?
Effectively, yeah. The process could, if that were something that we wanted to look at, then I think from a process standpoint, then that would be something you might refer to the budget subcommittee. For the actual development of the budget, I think having I think the experience has been that typically one person has been heavily involved in that for each budget. Right. And this is sort of institutionalizing that and recognizing that being the chair is a lot of work. Being the chair and being that person who's involved in budget development is a full-time job. And none of us are at this as full-time jobs. So I think you can
fill your time.
It's more progressive potentially. But
don't ask Bob on this one. His opinion doesn't count.
And I think it's also a good way for the vice chair to get a real handle on what's going on and be that much more prepared for the upcoming year. Because we don't do a whole lot of training for vice chairs. I think this year is year of
you are. Mary is.
Mary is,
we just swapped around seats today.
You know, this year we have some experience in the vice chairs, but normally it's somebody who's in their second year.
Very often you don't, right?
Process.
So I just 2 thoughts before I forget them in response to this. The concept of having the vice chairs be more involved with the budget, I definitely think is a great idea. Having just been through a year that was pretty busy, enjoyable in many ways, but very busy. I think that makes sense to spread it out a little bit. On the budget subcommittee itself, at least this year as we create it, I do think that we should specify something about budget process in it. Because I think specifically right now we are at a point where we've said publicly and with the finance committee, we're at a point where we'd like to redefine this process a little bit and make it work better both for us and for them. So that, we're not back and forth scrambling on responses and that kind of stuff. So won't get into it, but I think right now, if we're going to create a budget subcommittee, that part of the charge should be looking at and refining the process by which we create the budget in conjunction with, and the process as it relates to the FinCom.
So I think that could be a charge for them.
So that could be part of the budget subcommittee charge.
It wouldn't be the development, it would be the process.
Exactly, it's the process. And that wouldn't need to be the charge every year, because once we establish a great process, great, let's keep going with it, unless you need to tweak it. And the last thing is, I think this would probably naturally happen, but I feel like at least, again, this year, while that is part of the charge, that there should be at least one person that is both on the budget subcommittee and is one of the 2 people who's intricately involved in budget development. Because I think otherwise you would just end up with the right hand not knowing what the left hand is doing. So I don't necessarily think that it needs to be the same people in both groups, but personally at least, I would like to see one person that.
I would point out that the budget subcommittee meetings will be open meetings. They'll be public meetings.
Yep.
So there would be no harm in one or both
Someone
of the vice
attending.
chairs
Yeah.
attending as an observer.
As an observer.
Absolutely.
Sure, yeah.
So,
I just want to make sure that we facilitate lines of communication, not restrict them.
no, and I think
We're the constant.
Jared and Lori would probably both be involved in both.
Right.
Definitely both be involved.
So I think
Maybe.
so far Lori's been pretty good at keeping this.
So my only question about it, it seems like it might, and this is not, that it's not workable, but it feels like it complicates the process and the communication of the process, especially given that next year, well, one, at a very basic level, we're all, need to be intimately involved. It's one of the few things that we need to know intimately. And two, just not trying to overcomplicate it so that the vice chairs do the work, but then the chairs get updated when they get ready to set the agenda, they gotta know, and then the subcommittee is doing a separate thing that has to also update at the same time. I'm just a little worried we might make more work for ourselves to keep it communicated if we separate it out that way. And sort of think maybe we try next year, and maybe it happens that we also, sort of urge the vice chairs to be the subcommittee, the first two in, and then one more. Kind of concentrate in one place and do in essence, maybe both of what you're saying, so that it's kind of more streamlined and it's going to be different because you guys are going to take an approach that's brand new for all of us.
I want to switch seats.
So you can do it all, report back. I don't know, I just don't want to overcomplicate the number of people that then have to tell what they were doing.
That's a good point.
That's exactly the point that I was trying to get
Not
to.
that I don't like the model, I like the model of like spread the work, but.
Well, let me sort of, I hear what you're saying, and I get the point. I also think that there may be more work with the new finance director next year than less. And the budget subcommittee, one will be, when they meet, it'll be public meeting, there'll be minutes. And there'll be, I don't think there'll be so much happening there that it just can't be an update during committee and liaison updates. There may be some reports, especially if we get into process development or development process, but that will likely come post creation of the fiscal year 20 budget. So the two things will be, and I think part of it will be the process of developing the budget. We'll probably flush some things out that Jared and Lori may want to have us riff on some process. But the other things, which is just sort of maintaining an eye on what's going on, having that sort of regular contact with Jared and doing warrants and that kind of thing. I don't know that is such a, I don't see that as something that's a hugely time-consuming update process to the committee. And then we have a process that we've been following, and I wouldn't recommend we change that much at this point on keeping us all apprised of the development of the fiscal year 20 budget. Which is why I think they could be separate and function reasonably well that way.
The only thing I would add in there or jump in is you just said if we're talking about development process that it would be after the development of the FY20 budget, and I was actually thinking the opposite, that at least on some scale we should be redefining this process now for the development of the FY20 budget, because I think we could do it in a different way throughout this coming development cycle than we did last year.
I think that, I guess I'd look.
And that touches back to, I'm not saying completely blow up the process, it touches back to the point that Lori was making when we met with the finance committee, saying, hey, we'd like to get ahead of some of this, we'd like to present you some of this information in a way that's more digestible, as opposed to just waiting for, their memo that asks us questions that we answer, right? So I'm just kind of echoing what Lori has already said to the Finance Committee, which is let's look at our dates, let's create a process, a timeline that works a little better for both of us in a way that we're bringing information to them that's easily digestible and in a useful fashion.
May I?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think there's two layers to this. One is the internal workings of how we're going to develop the budget, which, by the way, we've already started. So whenever anybody wants to meet with us, we've got stuff to share. I think as it played out last year, there are definitely some pivotal points, and I know there'll be more this year because we are coming at it differently. Pivotal points where you just know you need to get the committee in the loop. And Heather kind of played all these hats, Heather and Dan both did. So I think your point of how you might divide the labor is intriguing because it was always the same go-to initially. And that's really just about the numbers, honestly. That's all the nuts and bolts of a budget coming together as you crunch numbers and come at where it starts and where it's going and where it's going to land. So there's definitely some moments along the way that it mattered that there was some school committee eyes on it to say, okay, here, like you can feel the fork in the road, and I was wise enough to not make that decision by myself. So a little bit of feedback, like, okay, we can go this way, or we can go this way, and get just that little bit of input to then bring the bigger decision to all of you. I think to the other part is that front-facing part, which is really about the dynamic with the town, both towns, and I need to stress both towns because Melissa filled a very big role that I know Jared and I need to also work on, but she was the main liaison to Carlisle in any time between meetings. So I think that's something I don't want to lose track of. So the front-facing part is to both towns, to the finance committees, and that work on how we deliver the message, I think, is really important, which then loops into your point on warrant articles and town meeting and all of that front-facing piece. I think that might be the work of the more structured committee. So I think it's your decision as to whether it's people who are separate or overlapping. Jared and I will certainly be a big part of the communication to make sure the left and right hand know what each other's doing. Is there benefit if there's someone who's been crunching numbers? And in the number crunching, that bulk of work is probably this summer through November. And then you get to that point where you've got a budget and the rest of the number crunching is based on the things you're presenting and the higher picture items. So that's that work. And then it sort of shifts from November on, it's that front facing. So I'm validating where I see the directions going. I think it's up to you on who does what and whether there's overlap or not. It was a lot of time, to Heather's point, it was a lot of time to do both of those roles. Yeah. Because sometimes that front-facing piece is also trying to navigate some communication in between meetings and just help stay connected with the finance committee between the public meetings, and I think that was an important part of the work we did last year. So it may not just be the seat time at a meeting either. So that's...
And the other just little piece of insight that I would add to that, regardless of the fact that, and last year we did, I think, work pretty deeply with the budget. Maybe more so than before, I don't know, I've done it before. But regardless of the fact that it was a big time commitment to be doing the internal part and the external facing parts, I think there was also value to the fact that I wasn't trying to update somebody else to do the communication about what I've just learned. So to your point, Joanna, if there are too many steps and bridges to communicate things, it can create extra work. So I think there's value to spreading it out a little bit, but not so much that you create more communication challenges for yourselves.
So Lori, I have a question. Would it be a good idea at this stage for Wally, as an example, to write a preliminary charge and then, Wally, would you be willing to do that?
To write what?
A preliminary charge, because then once we see something on paper, all these questions are going to presumably come up again, I'm sure.
Right.
All of us will have some questions.
And it'll probably be some variation on what we already have for this year's. I will just point out again that I won't be here in 2 weeks, so but I can have it available for you.
And I won't either, so we're gonna be too short in 2 weeks.
Because?
I won't be here. That was always one of the dates that I couldn't make. It's the one
We knew
date this
that.
year that I can't make it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think maybe if you can get a draft,
Tell you
maybe we
what,
can
why
look
don't we
at
do this? Why don't we do this?
We have
You and
time.
I seem to be sort of, you know,
The most vocal in this discussion.
So why don't we both work on this?
Great.
And get it to these guys.
Yeah.
And presumably,
And they
as
can-
long as neither one of us have a
We'll
black
pass
eye.
judgments on it while we're not around.
It'll be a
Exactly.
collaborative effort and a collaborative result.
I mean, I think in terms of timing, while we're already working,
Right.
for us to
We
really,
need to get this.
Jared's not even on the clock yet, so if we could, I think, have the summer to really dive in and get ourselves synced up. Late August for you to come back and decide who's gonna do whatever's in the charge,
Yeah.
I think would be really
Would
appropriate.
be fine. Okay.
Yeah, and in the meantime, weigh carefully the trade-offs.
Right.
As long as
Just
we
do
We're
all
lined
we
up
do.
for,
Yeah.
this
We'll
school
get the
year.
charge here and then we can talk,
Right.
we can vote on it in July. Yeah.
The only other thing I'd add, you mentioned institutionalizing some things with this effort. It would also perhaps enhance leadership succession and
Yeah.
the necessary education that
Correct.
has to take place.
Yeah.
Speaking as a newcomer.
Good
There you
point.
go.
Just another thought that's relevant on timing, only because as we looked at our dates over the summer, and I know we have a July date penciled, and one of the questions has been, will we even need it, is there anything to do? Given where we are with this and creating a new process and potentially subcommittee, I would just voice that we might need that July meeting, even if it's a short one, maybe we can meet for an hour.
I think we
But-
expect to.
You're kidding me.
I know, we'll all miss each other and want to hang out longer, but
I think everyone should expect we should expect we're having the meeting.
I think we need
It would
to-
be the
right.
exception to come.
I think we need to plan.
I think with all
We
the
got other
transition.
stuff
That
coming up
makes
that's
sense.
gonna
So-
push us toward that too.
Yeah,
Later in the meeting.
there's a lot going on,
Yeah.
right, and Canvas. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there to make sure that we are planning for that July meeting.
Okay, we're good on this?
Yeah.
So next is the CCHS laptop program.
Feel free to chime in. So what we've been doing, as part of this work, actually, it's a great segue, we've been looking at the technology, very focused on the middle and high school to start with because of the one-to-one programs and the needs to sustain those programs. So John and I have been working with Peter Kelly to step back because the honest answer is that, especially at the high school, the middle school has been pretty stable. Especially at the high school, we've been using some of that allocated money to be sure that we come out in the black in tight budget years and delayed purchasing. So just a little bit of history. At the middle school, it's a one-to-one program that the district funds the laptop and owns the laptop throughout the 3 years. At the high school, that has not been the case. So it's been a program that, and like I said, John can chime in, and Joanna's pretty versed in this too because she was here. There's a combination of borrowing laptops, leasing laptops to own them, or bringing your own device. And so the combination of those has proven to be very, very challenging. Probably the most challenging of those components is the lease to buy component. We've worked with an outside vendor to do the finance piece, what they don't, and by finance I mean bookkeeping essentially, but they're not a collection agency. So we find ourselves in the collection business of past dated balances. I offered to take those on so Mr. Mastrullo wouldn't get all the responses, and found we have families getting frustrated, notifications and reminders haven't been going out. Like, we've had challenges with the vendor. That relationship is no longer available to us. So that's another precipitating factor to have this discussion. So there was a need to step back and figure out how to build a one-to-one program that was sustainable and kept us whole for the longer term. The other point of important note, when the lease to buy originally rolled out, it was 160 families per incoming class. Last year it dropped to 40. So there's been a very waning interest in that. And I think for multiple ones, the most glaring one to me is that the kids coming out of Concord Middle School have had laptops provided.
Right.
So when they hear they can borrow at the high school, they're still in that mode and take us up on that. So I think that's some of us creating our own outcome there. But then to be in the business of collecting and chasing for funding, it isn't a healthy piece of our rapport with parents typically. So we did a big step back to figure out what our options were. So a reminder that in the budget, we held fast on the technology money in the high school budget because we knew we had been in this mode of borrowing from it and knew we had outstanding needs that were going to catch up with us. So the line item at the high school is $380,000 currently. So through the work of Peter's team and John's involvement and us having more and more dialogue, our recommendation tonight is to move off of the straight outright purchase option and go into a lease kind of mode where we're paying over 3 years, we own the machine at the end of the 3 years, we buy them out at usually $1 from Apple's program. Those become capital assets for us, and then it refreshes on a stable, steady, predictable amount where we always have up-to-date machinery available to our high school staff and students. The other thing we've been looking at is whether we need to maintain all the desktop machines throughout the districts, frankly. And because staff have laptops, there's all sorts of options to not need that. You can just leave the cords and plug in. So we're going to start to phase those away. So there's quite a bit of cost savings to not keep those in a replacement cycle. So the recommendation tonight comes in multiple layers. I think one is to phase out the lease to buy program at the high school. It doesn't feel effective. And for the amount of money we're taking in and the amount of time and labor we're putting into collecting the money, it starts to be a zero-sum game. The other piece is to then lease the machines and own them all for the incoming freshman class over 3 years. Then there are machines, which is also highly beneficial in terms of our IT folks and the maintenance and upkeep of them all. And it becomes some asset for us as we buy those out. And then the third piece is financial. So in the early first year of this, we'd be looking at doing this for the incoming freshman class and continuing to get by with what we have for the older kids. So rather than the $380,000, we'd be proposing using of that only $111,000 to fund the lease for the entire incoming freshman class. And then obviously the years to come, you build that up. So a year from now, we'd be talking about doubling that. A year after that, it'd be triple. And then you'd have the long-term sustainable number in the budget, which is still pretty well under the 380 that's in there right now. And you're always going to have fresh machines. There's another discussion to be had over what you do with the 3-year-old machines when you get them. My other district had lots of options with those. It's harder when you're a one-school region, but not impossible, I think, to figure out how to reuse those for benefit. And it, I think, begins to become a long-term provision of hardware for a program that I think we're all very committed and invested in. So I think we're looking for feedback. We weren't feeling like it was a formal vote per se, but didn't want to keep going in this direction unless we had your support.
It seems to make sense. I mean, it seems to put us back in more control and cost us less. Is that not correct?
I guess it's less, but
you're not really dropping down to $111,000.
Right, but even when we get
you're going to want to maintain that 380 so that you have that's just one aspect of the computer replacement piece.
Right.
But you want to embed it into your budget, and then eventually you will want to phase out the lease purchase piece and have it planned as outright purchases so you avoid the interest cost.
Okay.
You're
so then we need some years when we...
Similar to what we did in the CPS budget, where we built up a budget to $688,000 and we maintained that, because that provided pretty much a steady state budget for the replacement cycles that were needed in the K-8 district. You're going to need to ramp up in a similar fashion with the use of the lease programs, but eventually you will want to get away from leasing because of the interest cost. Right now the rates are relatively low, but they are going up, and you will need to establish that capacity. That would be the best way to do it in the future.
I'll just say, other districts have sustained the leases once they've got in them, so I think, to John's point, it's a discussion to have. Right now, we're just trying to get stable.
Right.
And build a plan for the next 3 to 5 years that we can see we have the machines we need. Because right now, frankly, a good number of them are 6 years old that we're trying to massage through the gift of apples, and I know that's a whole nother discussion, but we are getting 6 years out of our laptops. But that isn't necessarily the machine you can count on for the next few years. We've definitely got a core group of them that we're maximizing and getting nervous about. So,
and just a question to clarify, it might be that I'm missing something. Why not consider, as opposed to going down to the 111 this year, which is great for this year, I would say, but then knowing that we're going to have to build up higher, why not just keep going consistently, purchase around this year, purchase around the next year, and keep us in the purchase cycle versus going to lease only to have to come back?
So different places come at this differently. The district I just left wanted to know they had a refresh plan that was automatic, and every 4th year you had brand new machines, and didn't create the need for the $500,000 expenditure that you didn't have budgeted for. They decided they'd rather have a steady flow. To John's point, the interest becomes a factor in that, and so it's a pro and con discussion.
But as opposed to buying a big chunk of them every 4 years, could you buy a quarter of what you need every year? So have it consistent.
That's what the 111 does. But
purchasing instead of leasing.
You still have a fairly large inventory. You'll have a number of new machines coming in associated with that $111,000 payment.
Right.
But you've still got 3/4 of your inventory that are static,
right,
and a portion of that is aging out. So
right,
you're not really going to see a reduction from that 380 baseline.
Can I ask a couple of questions? The 380 is currently being used for what?
Well, in addition to the laptops and the desktops, and you also have a lot of your hardware that's supporting the network. So you have your, well, they used to be Cirrus dishes, now we're moving away to Aruba. There's a lot of hardware and firmware embedded in the entire structure.
It's the entire basis of hardware.
Yes.
That's what I thought. And so what we're doing is proposing to take $111,000 of that 380 as a lease payment, one of 3 lease payments for the machines we would bring into the district this year.
So the $111,000 if you think of it, each machine is roughly $1,100. If you did an outright purchase, you'd be able to buy 100 machines. By leasing, you're going to leverage that, and you'll get 300 machines, which essentially will cover an incoming freshman class. If you look at the high school, we're at about 1,250, 1,270 kids. Typically, the senior year drops off a little bit. So your incoming class, you need to provide 300 plus machines, just by way of planning.
Would the idea be that, not dissimilar to freshmen coming in and buying a computer in the old structure, that the freshmen would use that computer for the 4 years they're in school? Or are they going to get another computer in the 4th year? Are they going to give them back every year in the summer?
They would pull them back in the summer with the district owning them, and that's beneficial in the sense that sometimes things don't survive the summer well, but it's also a way of maintaining the operating systems, making sure all the upgrades are done, any minor repairs can be done. So there's some really...
May get more life out of them.
There's some really positive aspects to that.
They do the middle school.
They
take them and kind of refresh them.
We take them all back right now.
There are a few exceptions. There are a few exceptions for IEP type situations and maybe perhaps a few others. But generally speaking, they come back.
I'm not really clear yet on what are we building up to in the form of an annual cost on just the student. Let me state right out of the gate, I have always been for the district owning the computers. We're delivering content and curriculum through these. It's the 21st century textbook. So I think in a public school, the school should be providing them, not expecting people to pay for them if we're requiring them. So I'm on board with the concept. So I'm just trying to get a sense of, we've been spending $380,000 a year on hardware. Or
We
something.
haven't been, that's the problem. We've been borrowing from that for other things. So it's been a few years since we've had a bulk purchase. At
And
the
we've
high
seen
school.
other
the easiest
districts
to
who get
catch up.
behind the 8 ball on this, and we don't want to be behind the 8 ball.
Correct.
So where are we, in 3 years' time, what does that line item look like
I think it
under
looks
this
like-
process?
I think it looks like $500,000.
And that's $100,000 less than we're spending in
Well,
K.
it's 120,000 more, but.
And we're spending a
but-
K
but-
is what it was my.
So I'd like to have Peter flesh that out for you, I think, a little more specifically, so you can see it if that's what you
Yeah,
want to see.
that's
The
a good
timely
idea.
factor here was to not survey the 8th grade about whether they wanted to lease a laptop. So if you give me that yes, that's the most important thing we needed tonight, was to not have to put the survey out. But we can bring you more details and flesh out the cost in a couple of scenarios
How we're
for
doing
you,
it.
and I'll,
There was no budget increase for the one-to-one program being implemented at the high school.
Right, I
And
remember.
and you need to, at some point,
Yeah.
you need to factor that in.
And the idea was the new machines were going to be purchased by parents.
Correct.
And we were going to use
that
old
didn't really-
machines for the
That didn't
world.
really pan out.
I had a question. I'm going to ask the obvious question because it'll come up. Why, if we're going to go into owning these, why own these versus netbooks or PCs?
Well,
Which are
so
cheap.
a lot of districts go to Chromebooks and they're replacing them often in less than 2 years. So there's a lot of experience out there from other school districts that we've learned on where the Chromebooks are being replaced constantly.
they're a far less powerful tool. They're a web-based browser, so unlike the laptops, which have all these incredible Macintosh, Apple functions to them, and the tool sets and the iMovies and all these powerful things our kids can use,
Because this little thing
you lose a
flying-
lot of that.
I'm not advocating for it, I just want
So
it
that's
to be said.
that's the first piece, is you might be replacing them 3 times faster than
You're
the
not getting
Macs.
the power.
And you don't get the same.
It's not the same tool.
In all of this evaluation too, we're also looking at a lot of the administrative machines at the high school, which are currently Mac-based products. We don't really feel that that's an absolute necessity. So there would likely be some movement away from Macintosh in some of the offices in the high school, and that there will be cost savings there. But really, the longevity and quality of the Macintosh products does work out on a cost basis.
So I'll take your support to not put the survey out, and we'll bring you back in 2 weeks, a more thorough outline of 5 years of cost. Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great move.
So next item is parking at the high school update.
Bob, may I just interrupt?
Sure.
Because I know we've have individual items here, but there are 3 in a row that are all pertinent to the campus itself at the high school.
Sure.
And in some places they overlap, and in some places they are more distinct. And I think there's an umbrella of thought to go into this, and we may not want to have 3 separate conversations
Right.
until we've talked through all 3 topics, and then talk on the next step
Okay.
after that.
So maybe we have the parking update, then I can speak a little bit about the campus advisory committee.
I think I
And
can
then we
even
can-
probably, what I was planning on doing initially is, especially for Christine and Court, but for everybody, because I learned a lot in the process, is more of an update of the process that would have to happen to, where I started was the process that would have to happen to create more of a parking lot, to put more parking at the high school. And what I learned in that, it will also affect the drainage question and campus advisory question, I think. And I want to try and take something that's enormously complicated and try and simplify it enough for us to be able to work through what next steps might look like.
Okay.
Yep.
And I imagine to make it more complicated, you're also coupling it with things already on the docket, lighting.
Not necessarily. What I'm trying to do is get us all on the same page.
Okay.
Of
I'll listen.
here's what this campus entails, and we can include a conversation. Yeah, and there's a link to just, does everyone have, I brought a copy of the campus if someone would rather have a, okay, so, or there's one up here.
Yep.
So, here's the key about this campus, and I think some of us know all this, but I'm going to do a really basic 101 of where we are. This entire campus that we're looking at is in the Groundwater Conservancy District. So that immediately triggers special permits and things that have to happen, and lots of board and towns departments involved, because Concord's water system has we have 6 active groundwater supply wells. One of them is a Hugh Cargill well, and that's near the entrance of the Walden Street entrance of the high school. So a lot of what happens on the campus is about protecting Concord's drinking water. When we built the new high school, there were a lot of, for lack of a better word, sort of takes and gives around developing that building plan and also making the campus improving this aspect of the campus in terms of any contamination to that well and those kinds of things. So one of the things, and one of the most important things, was reducing the impervious surface on the campus. So by law, by state law and by town law, towns have the lines of state laws, the maximum impervious surface that can be on this campus is 15%. The old school, as it existed, was, I think I have these numbers, but 20.225%. So part of the give and take around what we want to do and what we want to, how we want to develop the school was reducing the impervious surface, among other things. We have a lot of green, aspects to the school. We built up more than out. There are a lot of things to reduce, and this went along in this sort of negotiation of making the best of the situation. So there are a lot of improvements, including reducing this impervious surface. The old student parking lot, which is the landfill, which is the capped site, was calculated in that number. So it currently is part of what we have as impervious surface on the campus. So in order, okay, so that means that that cap, which is to the right here, that funny shape on the right is what we're talking about, is also part of the calculation. The message definitely is, if we're going to increase the number, that's going to be concerning. So, you see where I'm going is that place for putting something like parking is would not increase our impervious surface, but if we put it somewhere else, it does. Right. So does that make sense so far? In order to create a parking lot, or a track, or a field house, or anything, you would have to apply for an amendment to the special permit. So the special permit exists. We want to amend it. We want to add impervious surface. We want to add a building. We want to add, a parking lot, anything, a track. What that does is involves an initial meeting with our idea. So I'm just going to say parking for the sake of argument, because it was supposed to be a parking update. We want, we work with administration, everything we say. We all decide, 60 parking spaces or 80 or whatever it is. Here's what we would like to do. And we would like to amend our special permit. That goes through the planning board, which triggers basically an initial meeting of all the boards that are involved, which is the Natural Resource Commission, Water and Sewer, I think Board of Health, Planning Board, Engineering. So all those people, all those departments have different concerns around what we would do. So that's a very basic explanation, which in some sense that's good, because then we would sit at a table with engineering, water and sewer, natural resources, and bang out like, well, we have concerns about it for this reason. Well, I like that you're doing it here, but I'm concerned about the runoff. So the drainage would be important to us. That would probably be water's one of the big things. So that's a very involved process, which is one way of saying there's no such thing as a temporary parking option, because if you do temporary and say we just want to do this small number over here, you still have to do the same thing as if you have a well-vetted, we want to do, this more permanent plan because we've thought it through and calculated it out for all these reasons. And the other thing I learned is there's not very much understanding of the stresses on the family and on the administration and on the school committee around this topic. So part of it is our own education of, you know, what the demands are of other families and what families, you know, are coming to us, the needs and the stresses that they have. And obviously our role that's felt conflicted about whether we are sort of legislating that or. So that's sort of the overall sort of approach to anything on the campus, and certainly parking. And at the same time, what happened during that building project was a second project that started, which was CC at Play. And so there were two projects going on at once. And to this drainage on the lower field, that was part of the CC at Play project. And to this drainage and this whole conversation is, what I learned also is there are a few issues that are still sort of open from the initial special permit. So even when we get to our idea about what we want to do next, we are going to be confronted with, and I'm starting to learn what they are, which is good. But again, it's different. I talked to NRC and I learned their concerns. I talked to Water and Sewer and there's engineering, and they're all different, and they are, you know, but you haven't. One's about a curb cut, which I think is around this the fire department having a curb cut to access for an ambulance and a stretcher to go in. But it's, I think, a little tied into, and I don't have this quite accurate, but I think it's tied into, we didn't do our paving and lighting yet, which in that process probably would have, can be addressed, right?
And we're full circle again.
Right, so basically it's very complicated, it's pretty complex, and it's not an easy answer. And the drainage is one of the outstanding things. I think there's some others, which is to Lori's point about the parking, the site, the other remaining issues that are outstanding, and what maybe a campus advisory, new campus subcommittee might want to start to be a receptacle for. It's like a way of articulating it. Like, we might need, and I think it's partly, you know, administration has changed, school committee members have changed since that building was built. CC Play, all this, you know, results in a few dangling things that we need to kind of collect and address, and I don't think it's insurmountable at all. And then move to next steps with regard to parking and others. Is that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow, Joanna, thank you so much.
It's not. It's just
that
like it's interesting actually, and I do think that I enjoyed it for the most part, and I think that I just think, you know, there was some communication.
Definitely communication.
You know, fall-offs, and we learned a lot, and where people's frustrations are,
and that's a huge help for you to just summarize it like that.
Yeah,
that's
incredibly learn it.
The only part that's not clear to me is why perhaps this is a surprise to some folks in town that these needs are
I think
very real.
I will say there's two things. One, a real, this was a real sort of sustainability. The green features in this school are phenomenal. There was a lot of that kind of approach to it. So why are you allowing kids to all come in cars? And the impression is they're coming because they want the cachet of driving to school. And
I also think the fact that new kids, new families are now coming into the whole issue.
Right,
You know,
and it keeps changing, right?
It keeps changing.
They only are in the issue
kids.
1 to 1.5 years or something.
Right.
2 years.
But like right now, it's not an issue for me really, so for the school committee, but because my daughter's 12. But if my daughter was an incoming freshman, all of a sudden this would make a
It would be important to know.
I think we also used to, even though we had fewer parking spaces, we parked more cars.
Right.
At the high school,
That's part
at
of
the old
it.
high school.
Right.
So
There were less official spots, but there was more space to put
your car.
cars.
Yeah,
And so therefore it just wasn't as much of an issue.
Now we see you.
Right.
So may I add to that?
Of course,
And we'll
yeah.
still be under the umbrella of those three things. I want to follow up on the parking. Joanna summarized the long term. I've been working with the high school administrators to talk on short term because that we have no opportunity to expand parking. So our recommendation, I say with wishing it were different, but our recommendation, we have 184 legal spots. This year we needed 210 spaces for seniors. We did not have 210, so that's where the BD arrangement came into play. Essentially 2/3 of the senior class was looking for parking. Enrollments for the incoming junior and senior classes are very stable, so we can probably use these numbers for some guidance. But the steps that we're looking to take, and we want blessing because we're gonna need support. We will try to survey the kids before school is out. As we debated that, the response is as good as the kids participating in the survey. We're into Q5. We struggle to get answers by email with the kids anyway, so while we will put that effort out, it's marginal. We started to think the data from this year's experience is probably just as worthwhile as surveys, because in under response, we don't want to take as a minimal need and be completely wrong.
But reaching out, I think, is really important, just to say.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course. So, and then our recommendations are the following. So when we numbered the spaces this late fall, we purposely did not line and number the spaces along the roadway in front of the Beatty Center. Mainly because if you start doing that, you're gonna lose some space, because the 12-foot requirement, they're parking closer than 12 feet, and you're gonna minimize it a little bit. That said, given that right now we need more structure here since we have nothing else to work with. So our recommendation is to line and number the spots along the Beatty Road. Assign spots to the seniors. They would be the priority. Solidify and get in the names of the kids over the summer as to who needs a spot, and over-communicate that, and make sure we can park all the seniors. We are quite confident, boy, I say that with a lot of hesitation, but we're pretty confident that between the 184 in the lot, and if we number the Beatty, we can assign senior spots and meet that need. The juniors have been and will continue to be the discussion point. Our recommendation, because some of the stress you've heard, and we've all heard, is the first come, first served mode we've been in. So we'd like to eliminate that, which comes with its cons. If we number and assign the spots to the juniors so that there's a set lottery for those spots, and it won't be a huge number, it will probably be 30-ish. We assign those spots, those are those spots. There's no first come, first serve anymore. You know you need a plan because you can't park at the campus, and that becomes a long-term family management issue rather than this day-to-day, which I think, as Mike and Brian and I talked on it, as we bubbled that up, I think that is some of the stress we're hearing, like there's not assurance on a day-to-day basis of what's happening.
So, Laurie?
Yeah, go
If I
ahead.
could just ask, 23 spaces at Beatty, right?
Right now.
Right now. And the driveway goes by Beatty. How many spaces would be?
We're
created?
estimating it right now. We're estimating
Like-
50 to 60 along the driveway. And just so I'm clear, right now, I am not recommending that we re-engage with Beatty. It's been a struggle for both sides.
Right.
So we don't see that as part of the solution for this coming year.
But maintaining is with BD?
No, we will be recommending
scrapping that whole deal.
Yeah.
So we would no longer use the spots.
So you lose the 20.
So you don't get those 20.
Got it.
Correct.
Got it.
Correct.
Okay.
And probably most important is that the communication of this plan happens sooner than later, so the surprise factor isn't there, and the juniors understand that there's a pretty good chance they're not going to be able to drive. And we give them all your email addresses when they read the memo. But I think earlier is better. I think part of what happened this year, not only the first come first served, but the surprise factor of like, oh, this is a daily mess for my family, and we didn't know that was going to be the case. I think we're to the point where the best we can do is structure and information. We don't have a solution. I think the communication that needs to go out has to be very thorough at the work that the administration and this committee has done to try to come to some solution, and at least try to be sure that the community knows we've given it a really solid effort here. So that's our recommendation for the short-term piece. We don't need a firm backup here tonight, but if we want to, certain pieces of it are dependent over the next 2 weeks. I think some communication can happen after school's out, but it's not a decision we want to make in August, so.
So we would be adding about 35 to the 184 legal spots. Is that about right?
I would say it's pretty safe to think you're going to add 50. That's the number we've been ballparking.
But we're taking away BD.
We're taking away, correct, so it's a net difference.
It's a net 25.
Yeah, so
30.
25 to 30 juniors.
Yeah, okay.
Make it a spot.
Have we paid anything to the rec department
We've
this year?
We
For those
have said
spaces.
we will. I don't know if we've actually transferred the fees to them. Those kids in the BD
Fees.
spots didn't get spots till later in the year, so we prorated it. So we need to transfer $200 times 23 to the rec department.
I hate to give up on those spaces.
Yeah.
And I'd
Well, we can,
be happy to get involved in
yeah, I think
Yeah.
if we,
working on
yeah,
this.
we need to talk on how that's operating, because right now it's contention. It's just
Yeah.
straining the rapport
I've
between the
talked to
school
some
and the
members
town.
who just,
So,
you know,
yeah.
Well, I think the problem, one of the problems is that we are commingled, and if we changed where the gate was to cordon off, these are the spots that we've got for the high school, these are BD spots, and the BD center can then say, if you're parked in there for more than 3 hours, we're gonna
We
ticket
can
you
try.
up,
I
tie you
have
up.
had a fairly clear message to date that they're frustrated and might not entertain the opportunity.
This year, the students who can park in there, they can park anywhere in that
No.
lot, or they have to be
No.
at the end?
No, they need to be at the end, and I, honestly, in doing the homework we've done when complaints have come, the complaints aren't really those kids, it's kids who have a family pass to go in, or
That's
get
it.
a pass from somewhere
That's
else, and
it.
are
Yeah.
extending their privilege
That's
to
like a
pass,
gate
to park
could
there.
be-
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
it
Make a
would be
difference.
important, yeah.
Right.
Oh,
And frankly, we've
yeah,
heard
some
from
things
parents who felt, if I'm paying for the membership, I don't understand why I can't park. So there's some tension there that I think we have to
And
navigate
that,
pretty
right.
carefully.
And that one, though, that piece of tension is not gonna go away if we don't use
Right.
specific spots at the end of the
Well, we'll have to
because the
work with
families
BD to
there.
help patrol their lot and
Okay.
stop that habit.
So it sounds like, to me, the pressure is, for two things we know, next fall, is we're not gonna be able to have anything approved for additional parking that,
Right.
and two is, so we gotta look long-term. So that says to me that, and two, we can pretty safely say we can accommodate seniors, we're just unsure about
Yeah, I
What
quite
the-
safely.
what the,
we
so
can.
what you need from I think today is what I'm gathering is we need to say, yes, let's start to craft the message so everybody can prepare.
Right.
And how much, of what all of this information is necessary, whatever, but craft it so that families can get ready.
I think so.
And that takes off at least like, the piece of expectations and let's, right, let's just sort of allow for you guys to,
Right. No one's more disappointed than we are that this is the
Right.
outcome.
Well, and I think we're
Going into the
disappointed
fall.
too, and I think that
Right.
we are, that to me, that's the easy thing. The next step is the hardest thing.
Yeah.
What do we decide we want to do
Right.
and prioritize?
Right.
And as basically, the space that I think is the most likely to be approved competes for other interests. So that, and to me, and is all maybe part of this campus advisory group to doing some legwork, and maybe it's
Right.
partly then you go, and do this kind of
Reapproach.
conversation at BD or with my, understanding that piece and.
So,
I would
Just
hope
on-
we're very sensitive to BD, in that, I'm not sure we went to them for a permanent solution, did we?
No, it was a one-year
So
arrangement.
we don't want the favor of today to be the must of tomorrow, because we can't go back again and again for more. This is a temporary measure. I think we need to underpromise, and I'm not sure we can then over-deliver, because my math says we can, with these 50 spots, if it's 50, do what? Pull in at most 20 or 30 juniors, at the very,
Correct.
very most, right? And this
Correct.
assumes that our preliminary look at that driveway is going to pass
Yeah.
muster with whoever in the town needs to.
I think to your point, you would absolutely take care of the seniors first, and that would be the messaging all throughout, that seniors would be the priority, juniors would be a lottery based on whatever's left available.
the spaces on the driveway, we can just put in, right? We don't
We
need
can put
anyone's
in,
approval.
we vetted all of this because it's a private roadway.
Because it's hard.
We can just put
Purpose
them
already,
in.
yeah,
Yes.
right, okay.
Just one question on the short term in terms of maximizing the spaces we have. Something I've thought of, and maybe this now becomes outweighed by the fact that you were just talking about predictability as an important thing. But just to throw it out there so I haven't neglected the thought that has been nagging at me. I know that some districts do things where, as opposed to numbering and having everybody has their individual spot, which undoubtedly results in a bunch of empty spots every day. to maximize that use, another strategy is, okay, we have 180, we give out permits for 15% or 10% more than that, and you assume that on any given day, 10% are not going to use their spots. Now, it maximizes, I mean, there are districts that do it that way and just kind of assume that that's how you fill in all your spaces. Granted, that takes away the predictability we're talking about. It's just another thought to throw out there in terms of maximizing use of the spots we have. I don't know if it's something that we've looked at.
I would rather lower expectations early than frustrate people again.
Right, yep.
Yeah, because you got a kid that might have to come in at 10:30.
Right, at 10:30 and then they can't get a spot.
That is part of the
Right.
challenge here. We assign this kid,
That's
the
true,
kids a
you're
spot,
right.
they may
And then
leave
they
for
go out
lunch
to
and come
lunch,
back.
someone comes
Yeah.
in and they don't have a spot again. Okay, yep, no, that's good.
May I move to drainage? Just, I'm trying to be cognizant of the time. We have a
Yes.
very long agenda still. The final piece of this big picture is the drainage on the field, the lower softball and baseball field. This is trickle down remaining project because of the CCF Play project. So Joanna's been more referencing the building project. This is final stage of the CCF Play project based on concerns of flooding and high volume storms, especially by the abutters. So what happened on May 9th was I received a memo from the NRC saying that in the past there had been an agreement that certain remediations would take place, and the last of those, the only one that had not been executed, the last of those was removal and relaying of the drainage pipe along the lower part of the field, because right now a certain section of the pipe sits in the table, the groundwater table. So in the theory that it would drain out, if you're already sitting in the table, maybe it can't. So we've done our homework on this. The memo came with a corrective action plan due to the NRC May 31st. We met with them, Joanna and Bob did as chairs with John and I and Brian Schlegel and a few others. We've had the engineer back in who worked with CCF Play to provide a cost estimate on the cost of this reworking of the pipe. It's a $20,000 project with $6,700 worth of design attached. My personal opinion, and I guess that's what I'm here to offer, I haven't had an engineer yet, and we've spoken to two now and met with the NRC. I haven't, and I'll qualify that. I think the town's engineer is probably more positive than the others, that this remediates the problem. The NRC has agreed that if we do this, they will sign off and we should be done, no matter how the outcome is. But I'm wary of $30,000 that frankly we don't have in the regional budget, and not being more solid in a design that assuredly starts to remediate things. So I guess that's where I'm posing the question of what do we do next, given that we have that information and maybe don't have as much information as we want. We're under a timeline. I'm keeping them very close so they know we're working on this, and so that May 31st has come and gone peacefully. But we owe them a response. Clearly when we met with them, there was hope this was a summer project and would be finished over the coming months. So I think it's a third leg to all of this. It's separate in a way, and maybe we keep it separate, but I think it needs to be part of the bigger picture campus discussion, at least for tonight. So that's where we're at, which is where there's been some talk of, do we need a campus subcommittee? We talked on advisory committees, and some of our last meetings have been bouncing those ideas around. My recommendation is, this is a school committee discussion right now, so we get these moving pieces and administration. I don't think we're at the place where we're ready to bring the community back in and vet through. There's too many moving pieces, I think, till we stabilize. So that was my recommendation.
Yeah. So the campus advisory committees has largely finished its job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we got a report. There are about 5 projects that have high interest, and so clearly the parking issue and the track, which is one of the 5 preferred projects, have components of being in conflict with each other to a certain degree. Right. And so that's something I think that the let's call it the CCHS Grounds Committee or something like that would have to resolve, along with, you know, the drainage issue, which, you know, that's a short-term kind of project that has to come to a conclusion in terms of whether we do this work or not. Whereas the parking, and the track, and the outdoor learning commons, and the community garden, you know, those are projects that, you know,
Correct.
can be, you know, resolved in the next year or so. So I'm personally in favor of creating a subcommittee as opposed to an advisory committee, but having a lot of input from all the parties that have an interest in what is going to take place on this former landfill.
So I think it needs to be, I think we need to pull away from the ideas and take care of things on the campus currently. One, the outstanding issues, and two, further, so if we are going, you know, in the past we've said priority is to the stress of the parking or that kind of thing. We are going to pursue that further. It's going to be aligned with something that needs to go to town meeting and, you know, be funded, along with, I think, a handful of other things. We talked about paving and lighting. John has referenced a few things that really need to be done for the building. That's all like a bigger conversation for all of us. And I sort of feel like this subcommittee, campus subcommittee, should deal with some of the sort of current issues and, you know, be the repository for getting us to a place where we could then apply for some special permit or something for something, including, you know, the other things you bring up. But I don't know, I think this has to be resolved. I think the drainage thing might need to be a separate CC at Play district, school committee liaison, sort of how, because I think CC at Play has an engineer, that was the engineer, the third engineer, no, it was the second engineer?
So there's,
anyway, we listened to like a lot of theories. Basically, there are theories around resolving this, and it's a little unclear whether it will. So it's a lot of money spent for anybody not knowing that. So I don't know. I think we're a long way from considering things before we get kind of to a stable place with everybody from the town in the room to kind of have a conversation. Are we all sort of start moving in the same direction?
I agree with that. I think I agree that they're all on the campus, but I think there are different levels of timeliness, and they are different in nature. The drainage piece is a holdover from projects we've already done, and we need to resolve it. I do think we have the wherewithal between CC Play liaison, chair, to work with the administration of the town to try to come to some resolution on that. And where there's a funding need, could bring that back to a campus subcommittee. Because this campus subcommittee, as you mentioned, is going to have to, I mean, we're not going to do anything on parking or use of the landfill or whatever's left over after parking, whatever we do, without a design.
Exactly.
And we don't have the money for that, so we have to go to town meeting and get money for it.
Right.
In the event there's a special town meeting in the fall, then we should be prepared with a warrant article or warrant articles, and. I think it should be part of the charge of that subcommittee to prepare those. And then additionally, because we've had the report, we are now in possession of the report from the advisory committee about what to do, what we can do, what are the options. We need to sort of settle in and come to some conclusion as a committee, and we can use the subcommittee as a place to sort of do some more in-depth activity on that, to what we're going to do, what we're going to propose, and what we're going to try to get funded. And I think doing it now, it allows us some summertime to do some of this work, because if there is a special town meeting, the warrant article is going to be closed relatively quickly after we resume school. So that's going to have, that's work that has to be done. So I would recommend we take that approach. You know, the parking is a real challenge, and I think what Lori has outlined is a good approach. I would love to take another shot at trying to secure some of those PD spots in some way, shape, or form. But maybe that's also part of that discussion that happens with, away from the subcommittee and more immediate, because it's all sort of interaction with the tenants.
So basically your suggestion, let me just clarify I'm hearing it right. Your suggestion is we create our campus subcommittee, it's owning all of the pieces that have long-term ramifications. The planning, exactly, the planning pieces, and at the same time, simultaneously, we have 2 other small projects or issues or whatever it is that we need to deal with, one of which is drainage, that Lori and crew, maybe with a liaison or 2 from us, will deal with, and parallel to that.
We need a liaison or 2.
Yes, absolutely.
The questioning of
absolutely.
the needing, do we need to do this, is going to require help.
So Lori and crew with a liaison or 2, presumably 2, but anyway, a liaison or 2. And parallel to that, Lori and crew and Mike dealing with the short-term, parking for next school year with a liaison or 2 if you want, but that's kind of its own parallel project that you're working on. And those are happening next to the campus subcommittee, whatever we're going to call it, that's talking about planning. Is that the suggestion?
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'd just be sure that subcommittee starts with sort of unresolved issues first.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Before
moving forward.
And the other thing that I would say regarding that structure is kind of the same thing I was saying about budget stuff, which is I want to make sure that we're not creating too many bridges of communication that have to be filled in, and that it would probably help if there's at least some overlap between, if one of the people that's the liaison on the drainage thing is also on the campus subcommittee or something, just so that there's a natural flow of communication.
I think it can be one committee. I think that what the pressure is, we got to resolve the drainage thing. Like sort of, we got to have some soldiers go and like.
Right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Which is let Lori do it without it having to be a subcommittee that needs to.
But I like your idea of a liaison to that subcommittee.
Oh yeah.
Right. A subcommittee just takes longer to get stuff done because it's public meetings and it's all that.
So my thought on this subcommittee is that we have 4 or 5 members from the 7 of us, and probably work every 2 weeks through the summer, because if there needs to be a warrant article by early October, we're going to need those meeting times to get things resolved.
Right.
And undoubtedly 1 or 2 members here and there aren't going to make a meeting, but at least you're not going from 3 to 2 or 1.
Right.
You're going from 5 to 4, and at the worst case 3.
Right.
And those individuals will still be able to get some work done. And so.
Yeah,
any thoughts on that?
That makes sense.
We have no time.
No, we have no time to waste.
Yes, we start now.
You're laughing at us.
I just asked Jared to make sure he signed a contract already as he's listening to all these long projects rolling out his whole summer. So, I think that's the right direction. Maybe we come back to it 2 weeks and tidy it up, and we are going to need to figure out who's doing what, because I think to the point of there's timeliness to all of it. So.
But as long as the drainage stuff, you can keep going on the drainage stuff with, a liaison or 2, but without us creating a committee and a project and a charge and all that kind of stuff. Because you need to be able to address that immediately.
You want to just use the CC play liaison and chair?
Yeah. Who is the liaison?
Okay with me.
Oh.
Got it. Yes, we agree with that.
Okay.
Want to trade?
So that's why, yeah.
And I will do some initial work on a charge for the campus subcommittee, and I will clearly take any input from anyone.
Sure.
Because there's 4 or 5 of us that are going to be on the committee, so
We'll
it's-
feed you
it's
input
obviously-
individually.
Exactly, that way
create
we
it.
keep it,
Yeah.
keep it from being a violation.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
We'll start talking right away.
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
I think we got through that, right?
Yeah.
We did.
Okay, so on to action items.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Are we ready
I'm
for
gonna jump
action?
in. All right, I'm ready for action. Let's see if I can find my right link here.
So the first item is to vote to accept.
So we have some, oh no, I'm up on the wrong one, sorry. I'm on CPS, but I was gonna move, vote to accept, okay, I'm getting there, I'm getting
So
there.
the vote is to accept donations to support the Ripley Drinking Fountain.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much for the contribution. We're getting closer and closer to the purchase price of a unit.
We
right?
are.
And that's good. So any further?
How far away are we from the purchase price of it?
We're just under $500, and I think it's $1,500. But this is unsolicited funds, just from the folks who would like to see us have that opportunity.
That's great.
Yeah.
Next one, I'd move that the Concord Carlisle School Committee vote to approve the CCHS girls varsity soccer team bonding trip to Orford, New Hampshire on August 31 to September 2, 2018, with the condition that we receive a signed district liability insurance waiver from all participants.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Awesome trip.
Aye.
Terrific,
That's
aye.
great.
Oh.
Come on, put them all in.
Policy, these ones we've already gone.
We have, there's
Are
one.
there any changes to what we?
One recommendation, thanks to Court's close reading, on the internet publication, policy IJNDC. There's a line that I think wisely Court questioned whether it was manageable about the webmaster approving all teacher postings. So we're going to suggest striking that because that's not manageable.
And so that's pretty extemporaneous.
Yes.
On the part of a teacher.
Correct.
It needs to be.
Yeah, correct, it would completely ruin the flow of teachers using their pages effectively.
Yep.
So we would, all the rest is the same with that one edit.
Okay, so then, including the edit just mentioned, I would move that the Concord and Concord Carlisle School Committees vote to approve school policies file EFD, IJND, IJNDB, IJNDC, IJOA, IJOB, IJOC, IK, IKE, ILD, IMG, JICH, GBEBD.
Second for both. Oh, sorry.
Made it through.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
For both.
For both.
May I ask
I know.
chairs if we can take a 5-minute break?
By all means.
I'm drinking from.
Well, should we?
We can adjourn the region.
We should adjourn the region, so Christine
Okay.
can go. I move to adjourn the Concord Carlisle Regional School Committee.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I am gonna ask, the principals have been
Oh,
waiting,
yes.
so they've just come in from their.
You got 3
milking
minutes.
around,
Go.
yeah.
Bust the
So
move.
go, but
Okay.
let's just.
Fast.
Yeah.
Quick bio
5
break.
No, it's 3.
Oh, you bet.
It's 3. Come on.
Yeah.
You've been having
No,
no
you weren't taking break right to get here.
I don't think so, Sharon's gonna do those too. Justin's coming to do that, he's on his way from the games.
Oh, Christine has to leave.
Brian saw it today, so he's okay.
Oh, no.
Okay, no, we're not approving it tonight, we're gonna hold the vote. I'll check on that. We don't actually own any of those. So we're,
Okay.
yeah, okay. We're gonna actually not vote that yet, because we're just not quite there.
No.
I need to go get some water myself, so I'll be quick too.
You can have my chair, Jan.
What's that?
Yes, I am. Where'd you go?
What's the, it's not, is it Roadrunner?
Priorities after you. Take care.
You too. You soon. I'm just going to email.
Jeremy, I totally scared you off yet, have
Not
we?
at all. I knew it was coming.
No, I don't think this is his first rodeo.
Yeah.
It's cold in here.
Yes. It's hard to get it just right.
I know. Then it gets stuck in hot. Turn it on.
Usually.
And so it's,
Who's doing the handbook? Erin, do you mind pulling up the handbook changes? It's the first. Should be the first report for discussion under the CPS.
all right, you ready, friends? Okay, perfect. What's that? Okay, now we're gonna roll here. K-5 handbook first draft, and Sharon Young's doing it?
Sharon Young's.
Sharon Young?
It clearly is.
She got up first.
Be up here and out of here. Hello, everyone.
Kristen put together a memo and about the handbook changes that we are proposing for the K-5 handbook, and a lot of it is cleanup, with a few changes, adding Twitter and so on and so forth to the handbook just to keep us current.
Mhm. And it's just gonna be this is one handbook?
One handbook for
No
three of
longer
us.
three.
Right, one handbook.
Excellent. All right, so this, I read through this earlier, this is all just
Cleanup.
cleanup?
Wordsmith.
All makes
cleanup.
sense.
Okay.
Do we have Jared's title correct in this?
Yes. Director of Finance and Operations.
I like that number 43, who knew?
I did read that and wonder, how many years has that been misspelled?
Someone got it.
This is great, that's so efficient.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, anyone have any questions? All right, great, well, thanks for that update.
That was good.
Do we need to vote, we need to vote to approve them?
I don't know, we're gonna put it, it's not down on as a vote.
It's not, now I see that, you're correct.
Can we,
I think,
do you need us to vote on it anyway?
yeah, I think we need to vote. So
I think you can vote the handbook.
All right, so can I have a motion to vote the
Move, move to approve the new K-5 handbook as presented.
Second.
How's that?
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Awesome. All right, under the K-5 school improvement plan update.
Erin, do you have the slides for that?
I don't, nope.
I just noticed that. I'm gonna have to come over and pull it up. I don't know why they're not. They should be attached.
By the way, I just want to introduce Terry Bono, who's a member of this school advisory council and at the Willard, and for showing up tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you for being your work and being here tonight.
That is a supportive school advisory member, council member. Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah, well, it's going to be up here, you guys. Do you want to sit or stand over here? Whatever you're most comfortable doing. That last mic is on.
Okay.
Next, the other one we can turn on.
Typically, we have presented individually in the past, and this year we are presenting as an elementary group.
I love that. This has gotten so many questions. This is great. We're going to rally right through this.
I love it.
We're a small crowd. Do we need the mic?
Oh, that one's not working. Here, take mine.
It's not really for the room as much as it's just TV. You don't speak too much.
I have a loud voice if I need to use it.
Will that work? That'll work. Except yours, it's a scroll. Whoever wants to fool them
Okay.
Do you want me to drive and you can tell me when to switch it, or you?
There's three.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, the reason why we are presenting the three of us together is because, as you know, we're currently in the strategic planning process, and so we wanted to make sure that we were highlighting the accomplishments that we've done across the three schools, and then we'll be looking ahead to next year, aligning our school improvement plans to the new strategic plan. So that's been exciting. So do you want to start?
Sure. So one of the things that to take a look at the meeting, the critical, I'm looking over your shoulders so it's easier. End of the year grade level standards. One of the things that we all have structures built in place in each of our buildings where we have common assessments that are formative and summative, as well as implementing a comprehensive RTI program. We are all, I would say, expanding our Tier 1 services. Would you agree with me on that?
Yes.
And then also in following up, expanding our Tier 2 and Tier 3 services as well. To meet the needs of students, our high needs students especially, we still see a gap between our non-high needs students and our high needs students. And so we're continuing to look at programming and structuring to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the students. If you look, we meet also regularly. We all kind of do it a little differently, but we pretty much meet somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks, every 6 to 8 weeks. And we talk about kids who are in need of extra support. And then we put together a plan and we implement that plan, and then we meet again 6 to 8 weeks later to kind of review, did the student make progress. We also are sharing best practices among the three of us, as well as teachers, and when they have district-wide. And as you can tell, we're also looking at creative ways of structuring so that we can provide the support for students who are in need.
So this, and that's the same goal in the 6 and 8 group, because it's K-8. They just,
Yes.
I got you. Okay.
So we pulled these from the district goals.
Okay.
So Justin, when he comes at the end of the month, will report out on the same one.
And we're talking more and more about the specificity of what is the intervention we're using, the duration, the intensity, the frequency, and then gathering the data to ensure that progress is being made, or how do we change things up. So it's really, what's really most reaffirming for me is to learn from the other schools, to see what we're doing in the other places, and sharing information.
Is the goal then to sort of all have the same RTI sort of program in place at each level?
I think what we're looking for is trying to create a menu, because the needs of students are different, and so I think we need to have a menu of opportunities and a menu of services, and I think that's what we share a lot is across the three of us is what might work at Thoreau I might take and use, and what might work at Willard, and so on and so forth. Our conversations help us in expanding our structure and our services to make sure that the students that come in.
What might look different is when we meet, and members of the team are going to be similar, but they won't necessarily be identical. But more uniformity than less.
Okay, so this year we have piloted a number of new curriculum materials. Number one is the Great Body Shop, which is a comprehensive health curriculum that we are still feeling our way through. I think that folks, there's certain things, because it's the first time that we're doing this, we're right now having conversations comparing how this curriculum addresses certain topics as opposed to how we used to do it, and we're still sort of feeling it out. But it is nice to have a common program K-5. The new FOSS science curriculum materials, our teachers attended trainings and are working to implement the new curriculums. They involve a lot of stuff, a lot of materials, a lot of opportunity for experiments. So that's been an exciting addition. The district-wide writing committee has recommended that we start utilizing the Lucy Calkins units of study. So the writing committee is making a recommendation around, I know you say new Lucy Calkins, you're thinking, she's been around forever.
No, isn't that what Scout did or something, and then we moved away from it?
No, we actually continued with it.
Oh, okay.
But what's new is her alignment with the standards.
Oh, okay.
So she's aligned the standards and the units of study. The writing committee's made a recommendation that teachers receive updated training, because it's been a while since we've offered comprehensive training for teachers in the writing curriculum. There are also new rubrics that go along with scoring the writing pieces that we'll be training the teachers in next year. The Innovation Lab is open, so all of our 5th grade, some of our 4th grade students had the opportunity to visit, and they had a great time. Teachers liked it too.
And just to speak to the Lucy Calkins, we brought Lucy Calkins in probably 12 years ago, 13 years ago. Trained the staff that was there at the time. Had trainers come out from New York City and do some in the classroom training. But then staff's changed in 13 years, so we need to revamp and bring that PD back so that we can get the new staff up to speed on what is expected for that program.
In each building, there are tiered levels for social emotional behavior support, and as research would suggest, and we believe fully within the buildings, when students are emotionally socially prepared to learn, they're more likely to learn. So we have been using Open Circle as the building B for Tier 1 in all classrooms, supported by our school counselors as leaders. And it's the vocabulary, it's expectations, and it's a very powerful first building block. But then beyond that, for targeted use, lunch bunches, and having every student known as an individual by at least one member of staff, and ordinarily it's the classroom teacher, but how do we support each other in doing that? Social thinking, which is from Garcia Winters, and it's a mode of making sense of taking perspectives, which enables students more and more, whether it's students who may have difficulty perspective taking, or when students start using technology and lose some of the interpersonal sensation of relationships. Social thinking is a brilliant curriculum that we in all 3 schools leverage. And then zones regulation, self-regulation, identifying how your body feels, how to use strategies to de-escalate, to be in a place of learning. So these are all strategies in curricula that we use in all 3 buildings, and we look to deepen them every year. There's PD that occurs in each building every year in the different areas, and we're looking to extend as necessary. And then we do have school-wide behavior systems, and these are positive reinforcement systems. Give a hoot, 3 Bs in a Willard, for example, a recess rock star. So rewarding positive actions, a sense of community and empathy and positive relations with others are ways in which we build that sense of community.
Could you just expand a little bit on that? I mean, what is Give a Hoot?
That's outcome.
What's 3 Bs? Is it? Sure. Okay, I figured that. No.
Yeah. So Give a Hoot is Alcott. It's we build it off of our caring, cooperative, respectful community of learners. So when a student is observed being caring, cooperative, respectful, they earn a give a hoot on a Friday. Their name would be announced, and they earn a certificate that they can take home, and then their name goes on a feather on our giant owl that's upstairs, and we try to fill the owl. So we kind of, yeah, with their name, and everyone gets give a hoot.
Can I just say that having been at a family's house recently whose kindergartner got a Give a Hoot award, I mean, the whole neighborhood knew about it. We were so proud of it. It was, I mean, it really was incredible watching it. It was very cute.
Their names are announced over the loudspeaker on Friday.
Oh, yeah.
You gotta get their certificate. You'll hear, sometimes the whole classes will earn a Give a Hoot, and you can hear them from the office cheering, even if they're on the other side of the
That's awesome.
So, which is great. And this, like, we kind of went over a little bit in the, increased achievement. I kind of did both slides, the first slide and this slide, by talking, it's the same thing if you notice that we're really trying to target our interventions for high needs students, making sure that we keep them as close as possible to the end of the year benchmark that we can give them.
Okay.
I don't know how you know. I threw this in here.
Right.
And I left it, so.
I was good, because I wasn't sure you were going to leave.
I know.
Do you want to take it on? Or?
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how much you've seen or got a chance to play around with our system for managing evaluations for employees. There are, no, you haven't. That could be really fun.
We don't get to play around with anything.
Yeah. So our supervision evaluation system for teachers and for any professional person in a professional role is tremendously cumbersome and time consuming. We have between 35 and 45 folks to do. And the way that the deadlines are, so we're one person. That's unique to the elementary level because we don't have assistant principals or department heads who can share in that responsibility. And in order for, we feel that we could do a better job of implementing the system if we were to reduce in some way, shape, or form the number that we had to do. Because the process, the goal of the process when it came out was really to help strengthen teaching and learning. But in order to do that effectively, you can't possibly get it done. And the way the deadlines are scheduled, we could have 14 or 15 days in order to turn around evaluations. For
40
folks.
evaluations.
Yeah.
No, wouldn't be 40 because we have some folks who are on a one-year plan,
Yeah.
some folks who are on a two-year plan.
Right, okay.
But we
But
had about
we're
30
doing over
at a time.
100 observations a year.
Right.
Yeah.
So we had, the average I think was we had 30 to do within a 2-week group, each of us for the first cycle. And that doesn't include new aides, support staff, tutors, custodians. So that's a whole other piece of the evaluation process that we get to after all of the contractually obligated evaluations that we have to write. So we would really like to improve the efficacy of the whole system because it's incredibly time consuming for us, but it's also, the teachers put in a ton of time into uploading artifacts and evidence and setting their goals, and oftentimes they're trying to achieve a goal that can't be measured until after the deadline for us to give them to them. So, if it has to be given to them by June 1st and we're still continuing end of the year assessments, it's sort of, you seem like you're on target to make that goal. We'll follow up after we're done with, that could be June 15th. So, so really for the amount of work, the workload involved, I don't feel we're getting the return we could be for anyone, for us or for the educators.
So I'm going to pipe in there because obviously this is not the first time I've heard the concerns, and we actually worked very closely with the CTA this spring, and actually at one point asked for an extension because it was physically impossible to get them done. So 2 things that I'm looking to do. One, the regulations require our joint labor management team to be in place to maintain an ongoing review of the deadlines and things like that. So the CTA and I have already had conversation of getting that up and running in the fall. You can make offline, you don't have to open the entire, this is all in the contract, you don't have to open the entire contract to mutually agree to move a deadline if we can come to some of those those spots. The second piece is we need to look at the leadership structure of the elementary schools, because for them to be the only evaluators is what's creating some of this. So I don't think we have the answers to that. We know cost neutral is probably part of the discussion, but I think that's our work going into the fall, so that we don't leave this as the status quo, because they're right, they're losing effectiveness, for sure.
And to do it well, you
Yeah.
really need to have the time to do it well. And as one person in the elementary level, and I just finished my evaluations yesterday, all 82 people that I had to evaluate, I just finished yesterday. And it's takes a lot of time, and you want to be thoughtful, and you want to give that person feedback and kind of help that person grow, and it's difficult to do as one person.
But I think that's the frustration, really. It's, you want to provide the best support for the staff as they are providing their best every day, and we're not able to have those conversations that improve instructional practice. It's just impossible to do so. And so we're finding ourselves rushing through to meet the need and check a box.
Right.
It's compliance mode, for sure.
And so we can do better
The quality
work.
of it suffers.
Yeah, right? And the staff deserve to have our support, and yes, we would like to do better work as well.
Have you looked into other systems that are used by other districts?
So, you mean computerized systems to manage it?
Or structures, or how to.
Or schedules.
Well, we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of the legislation that we ended up with this system with in the first place. So it's the perfect time for us to look at how other folks are handling it. But the number one way is by reducing the caseload and distributing the number of evaluations to other folks.
I mean, I can't imagine doing 82 evaluations. I mean, that's crazy. So,
and the way we feel is we're not putting forth our best work.
You're right. You can't give everybody your best.
So that wasn't what that goal was meant to be assessing, but it so clearly became. She's winking at me. So clearly it became the driving force that it didn't matter. We can't get to what the goal was meant to assess, especially when we're just talking K-5. So that's our driving need going into next year.
Makes sense.
When we're looking at resources and materials, technology planning is one piece that with some changes in the structure of personnel, we look forward to engaging in some planning with different members of staff, looking at preparing and being part of a 5-year plan. And then facilities maintenance, in each of our buildings we have different needs, and how does that play into a larger capital plan. I can speak for myself with the support of the community building. The new septic system is very important to the well-being of the school, and where does that fit within the rest of the needs of the district, and having oversight within our space, but also understanding of others is a piece that we're working on, and we look forward to working with superintendent and others to ensure that we have a roadmap that makes sense.
Sure. So we have been participating in the strategic planning process at our level, which I'm proud of the work. I'm really proud of the work that we've done. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to look at it yet, but
they've been at the bigger planning meetings, so most of them are
amazed.
So we are. I think we're always surprised at the end. We begin those meetings with these very big goals that we're supposed to achieve within a few hours, and I'm always thinking when I sit down, like, we're never going to get to this, and we do. We end up completing the goals. We end up with a draft of something that we send back to the larger committee, and then when we come back, we start by looking at where we left off, and we've said we were good. That's really great. So it's also been great to have our facilitator, Lori Likas, has been an outstanding facilitator, and I feel that we couldn't have done it without her. So it's been I think it's been great. It's also, I think, been helpful in bringing the three of us closer together and talking about values and where we'd like to see our schools go in the future. So it's breathed some new life into that. So
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's great.
there's a lot that comes out of those. I feel the same way when we get the big meetings. I'm like, whoa.
Like, we're never gonna do this.
I don't know how you can pull that
Never.
off. That's like a brain strain, just looking at that. And then, yeah, you get to the other side, like, wow, we actually did. We got 6 in now, whatever we're supposed to do. Like, wow.
Strategic initiatives or action plans. But it's been great.
That's great.
Questions?
That's what we've been working on.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you guys for all your work.
Covered all. Thank you guys.
It's really,
it's amazing.
Good opportunity.
Thanks for staying up late.
I know.
Yeah, thank you
Sorry.
for your patience
Being
tonight.
Way past my bedtime.
Great momentum.
I know.
Thank you for your
All
patience.
right, thank you.
Sharon, you stay for a minute on the.
Oh,
library
right. She tried to sneak out
I know
before
she
you got
did.
her.
All right, so we have
These
some
are quick, I think.
Yeah,
they should
voting
be.
items. I will take a motion that the school committee vote to surplus books at the Alcott Library.
So moved.
Second.
Did you second before you moved?
Let's move it along.
All right, yeah. All right, any discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Excellent, thank you.
Then yeah. And I would move that the Concord School Committee vote to accept proposed improvements to the Alcott Garden.
Is there a second?
Second.
You're slow that
All
time.
right, any questions?
Yes. Could you give us 30 seconds on it?
You're allowed.
Sure. You have a question for me, Cora? or
Just,
you want me
could
just
you
to
tell us
summarize?
about the improvements?
So we had, I included a picture of the proposed changes. Right now, probably, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we had the 4 beds created out there, and the teachers have been having their students use them, and we've been growing some mellow plants for the caterpillars to eat and before they turn into butterflies. And then there's been some discussion with grade 1 and grade 2 teachers with the garden committee, which is a group of parents, about expanding that so that they can do additional work that's more connected to their curriculum. They would love a butterfly plant, so maybe when their caterpillars turn to butterflies, they'll stick around instead of going off somewhere else. And then there's also some talk about making sure it's accessible to all students and making sure all students have an opportunity to access it.
It's great, it's a great improvement.
Yeah.
Terrific.
It's a great improvement.
And we all appreciate the work of the parent volunteers that
Yes.
have helped.
And they're going to do some fundraising to try and raise the funds for that, and then once the money is raised, then we'll take a look at what steps need to occur.
Awesome.
That's
Any other
terrific.
questions?
Yeah.
All right, all those,
Great experience.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thanks, Sharon.
You're welcome.
Finally.
Thank you. Now you can go.
Thank you.
And,
So how good are we?
did-
Mr. Cameron has
now-
already chaperoned an entire dance and managed to come over here to do
Nailed
that.
it. Look at your timing. Perfect. Then now that you're here, I will move that the Concord School Committee vote to accept the gift of CMS playground.
Can we
equipment.
give you a little
Yes.
frame on this?
Yes.
I know it's late, but, and Justin will get into the detail. We have to back up and do a little policy work here because there's an actual very tight policy on how to accept this. So Justin's got to convene a committee to vet this a little bit, and then you can actually vote it on the 26th.
Oh, okay.
Let's follow our own policies.
Absolutely.
But that said, I think it's important you hear a little bit of the detail because this is a pretty significant fundraising effort by the PTG, and it's at both schools, and like just give you a little bit of the lay of the land before you just approve what is obviously very exciting. But so Justin's here to give you the crib notes on what we're doing.
Actually, may I have a copy of what you're doing?
Certainly.
So as of right now, with the current 2-building model, you're looking at 2 pictures. This is what's going to be placed, actually what you have on the screen right now is going to be placed at Sanborn. And if you want to scroll down, then we have, no, I think you keep going. That's the same picture, I believe. And then another picture of what's going to be placed at Peabody, which is that. They're meant to come together when we have one building. And we have already spoken to this vendor, we spoke to the other vendors that were brought in as well, that there's really no problem with picking them up and bringing them together when we have one building.
So, yeah.
So I will say, as my 4th middle schooler's going through, and the rub with my kids always was there's nothing outside. You know, they come from the elementary schools and there's nothing to do. They you know, one I think has a basketball net. We've always been in Peabody,
Yeah.
but this is preceded by your efforts with the PTG to do also some other stuff outside,
Yeah.
additional basketball. I've heard about the Chester's loves the what's the
Tetherball. Tetherball, Gaga Pits, basketball,
yeah.
sports. We spent almost about 10 grand on both campuses so far, and it's made an impact. And,
yeah, it's
you know,
huge.
yeah.
I'm just saying sample set 1, but it's
Yeah.
been huge in the enjoyment and the ability to go outside. And I know there's some indoor stuff that was done too.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that's been a wonderful addition, and I think it's great for these kids. I think it's been a huge change in sort of the outlook of being able to enjoy your time off.
Yeah.
So thank you. I think this.
You know, I don't want to minimize the fundraising that we've done for this project, but for the equipment that was brought, you know, it's kind of low-hanging fruit. And you know, one of the early assessments when I had a principal for a day in November was, you know, him walking me out and just opening up this bin of like 2 deflated footballs, a basketball. And it was literally one basketball hoop with a net that was hanging there.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, it's you know, needs some love. And you know, again, you know, what we're trying to do at the middle school is just recapture that childhood. And, you know, it really, you know, 6th grade recess, 8th grade recess, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It's so true. It's really it's great.
Yeah. So Justin, just a quick question. What are those 2 things for? I mean, what's the activity? Is it climbing, or
Yeah,
and how
so
tall are they? And
the one on the right is climbing. These aren't really the best pictures. The Peabody doesn't really pop like the Sanborn one.
Yeah.
10 feet,
Well, the
15,
second-
20, or?
I think there's dimensions somewhere in here.
Oh, okay.
It's in the plan. The
Yeah.
next picture actually shows it a little better. But
You know, the concern with the Peabody right now is the area that we have to work with. You know, Sanborn, we have all the surface area. But, you know, we also had in mind the reconfiguration, you know, and this makes a little more sense for a 6th grade population.
Oh, yeah.
And this makes a lot of sense for a 7th to 8th grade population.
Oh,
good point.
So, you know, we really had a mindset of, you know, our present and our future.
that's great. Important.
I like the frog.
What?
The
Frog.
Oh, in the bottom of the plan.
The lead points for the structure.
Any other questions?
No, just these, I mean, these are such enticing looking things. It's exciting that you've really found stuff that would appeal to that age group too. You know, it doesn't look like elementary school playground equipment.
There's a market out there now, which
Yeah,
is nice.
it's great.
You know, I think if this was 10 years ago, believe me, the one vendor that at first we were like, probably not, was Little Tights. You know, we actually asked whether or not they tag their items. And they don't have
That'd
to.
be cool.
Yes, exactly. But Little Tykes, what we found, Little Tykes commercial was actually the best marketing. They had a whole giant catalog just for, I believe it was 12 and older. And it's amazing the different things, the data you can get from the different things. It's incredible. You know, you can sync these pieces to, you know, an iPad and just get all this data about the use. And that's another thing. We're not just seeing the stuff used at recess. You know, this is being used in PE classes. It's being used by kids playing soccer at the Sanborn soccer field. You know, the entire drama department was using it, you know, on a nice early spring day when they were supposed to be in rehearsing. So it's great to see. It's great to see kids being kids.
Yeah, that's terrific. Well, thank you for putting all this time into it.
Yeah, the PTG is much part of this. Just a lot of those moms were picking up their kids who were attending that school. The dinner dance went well.
That's
good. It went very well. I was walking in, I was thinking, geez, I think only the public who watches you on Access TV and saw something comes storming in at like 9:30.
No, we're not live yet, so that doesn't happen.
Oh, well,
No,
doesn't
you're
happen.
the only one storming in this way. Erin, would you do me a favor and give Justin the name of the student who came and spoke publicly at the beginning of the meeting on
Oh, yeah.
to compliment him.
Oh my goodness.
I wish you'd been here.
I think it's Ariel Baldwin.
No,
No,
that's
she's
the
the
high school
senior.
student.
Oh, the other student.
Emerson,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
she
Is
has
that
that.
Justin Moy?
So she
No, no.
sat where you are
No, that
and
was
signed up for
comment.
public speaking,
no,
told us how
yes,
great you were at
yes,
supporting
yes.
robotics.
Did I? Yes.
Yeah.
She came just to
Oh,
make a
Emerson
public
Lewis.
comment.
She did.
To say that you're a great principal.
You need to make a
Yes.
Yes.
It was
And it was
incredible.
very
Up to the
genuine.
mic, it was just
right.
like-
Good
So whenever you're
We've
paying
never had a
her,
public comment like
keep it up.
I totally cut the 26th. I'm scheduled to be here the 26th. Oh, Emerson, what a wow.
It was a wow. It was a wow.
It was a wow. We
I don't
were
think
all
I've never
pretty
seen
blown
it.
away.
It was the best public comment section I've heard since I
It
Actually, that is
was,
a good point.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's a
It was,
good point.
Yeah.
And
Lot
you
of
didn't
positive.
text me.
Goodness.
Yeah.
It was quick and you couldn't get here, so.
I know.
couldn't do anything about it.
You can
And
get
I'm on
it.
camera.
All right, I'm Mike Stein. I'm waiting for a motion that the Concord School Committee vote to accept.
Can I hold you on the motion? We need to
Oh,
follow the policy
sorry, I
first.
forgot you said that.
In fact, I already
Oh,
made
okay.
the motion, so I officially rescind the motion.
Okay.
There you go.
We'll vote it in 2 weeks
And we'll
after
do
we
it in 2 weeks.
dot our i's and cross our t's.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Take no offense that I rescinded the motion.
Yeah, right.
All
I
right,
make a
good.
motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Now you can.
Oh, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, yeah, this was your.